All right, Unc, thank you for doing the show today. I'm live right now on the ATK. I got another show. I got God Energy. Maybe y'all could come on over there if y'all want to. God Energy in the building. Come on over here and open it up, Reggie. Come on over across the street before God Energy. Come on. No, no, no. I said you could come over there and say what you want to say real quick before God Energy starts. Come on. That's all I'm saying. All right. Peace, Unc. Peace, everybody. All right, all right. We waiting on the God Energy. I want Reggie to come on over here and open up right quick. Drop the link. I got God Energy in the building today. Gonna bring some powerful energy. It's gonna be a part 1 and 2 series here that he got coming up. So you already know he gonna get it in. You're gonna get a powerful building right now. Chief X, you already know this is the toughest environment to be in. You should have waited for me to come in, man. We would have did that thing right. If you waited for me, you know they bullied you, Chief. I believe you, Chief. Dr. Reggie, I believe y'all did bully Chief X, man. I believe y'all probably got him. I'm gonna go listen to the video and find out myself.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
y'all
So
don't like Chief
I
X.
got. So I hear your narrative in sa.neter. We starting off the new year, and we started it off almost correctly, right? I've been off
Right.
your channel for a year, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So let's not go back, right? I'm respectful to everybody.
Everybody, y'all hear
Right?
that?
When respect is due to me, right?
Right.
But I have something to say. But guess what? You
What?
have a show, so I'm gonna talk to you later on, so I can do my information correctly, right? So
Yo,
go
you
on with.
can whenever you're ready to do a show, Reggie, you know you got the green light,
No,
brother.
I do know that, but we
I
was
gotta give you the keys and shit. Let you go ahead and do your show.
we gonna talk again on
Yes.
that,
Yes.
right?
On that.
But at any rate, because everybody know I support sa.neter. I've been
All the
there.
way.
I ain't been there in the beginning, but I've been there the longest
The
consecutively. Right?
longest. The
Even when
longest.
I'm off, if you can still count my time.
That's
You don't
right.
see me beefing with him or nothing. But God Energy has a show. I know he's queued up, and I know how important it is to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna get myself out of here. And yeah.
Hey, how did you like the captain show last night? Captain called me. He said he enjoyed it. He loved it.
Well, Captain gets a chance to learn from some of the best, right? That happen to be on your platform. Sa.neter, what he refused, he wants to say that the Bible magically
Yeah.
put itself together without
I think y'all didn't pound on him enough. Pause. Meaning y'all ain't really get him the way he posed to, like we do everybody else over here, like we do Apostle, like we do Yara, like we do the Hebrews. Y'all ain't really get him.
No, the thing about it is
I'm live, brother, waiting
with
on you to come in.
with the captain first, we were all off topic
Text me your
because
email. I'll send it to you. Text me the email.
we were off topic when we were talking to captain because he really wanted to talk about Islam. So we
Yeah,
inserted,
let me
I
go
had
check
to be
the thing.
respectful to
All
what
right.
he wanted to talk about, correct? But since he wanted to entertain
Yeah.
some questions, he
No,
magically.
you good. If I got the you send it in the email, right? Talk, Reggie, talk.
No, I'm talking to you, but you busy. You on mute.
All right, send it in the email. Reggie, I want you to talk while I'm waiting. While I'm talking to God Energy. We setting up.
Okay, fine. Okay, so family, last night with Captain Tazariak, right? We were off topic largely because he came to talk about Islam. So then we began to talk about things, gripes that we have with his general proposition to us. In my conversation, which went overlooked, I reminded the captain that the Bible didn't put itself together. It was the church fathers that retained the documents that ultimately created the New Testament, right? And Captain, he wants to disregard that these Gentiles who converted to Christianity, that they controlled the Bible. He wants to look at the Bible as this is a pure document, no matter who puts it together. So I was reminding the captain that no, it was always in the hands of the Gentiles, the ones that you hate. And the ones that you hate put together the Bible. Then we get this whole conversation about, well, there was text that we never seen, that nobody ever seen, that survived. Even the text was always in control of the Edomites, as he called it, or the white man, as he calls it, right? And so another part of it was just simple, that he doesn't understand the early symbols of the Christians, which was the anchor, and then the anchor with the cross, with the fish. So he tried to say that there were no symbols, but then he tried to bring in a Hebrew symbol. So what I said is really, really at the root of the conversation. Did the Gentiles take over Christianity, make themselves Israelites, like everybody seems to do, right? And construct the Bible. So that was my point. But on Ank's presentation and Chief X, we'll get back to that after you, so you can start your show. And if anybody in the chat, please, I'm watching. I need to learn. If I'm wrong, let me know in the chat, right? Because I do listen to your comments. I respect you the same way I hope you respect me. Thanks, sa.neter.
All right, Dr. Reggie. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that, brother. I say what it is, brother. What's happening? When you ready to do your show? I can't hear you.
I say, Si, we can rock out this weekend. I wanted to let the brother Humble God Energy get their stuff out the way. Then we can rock out this weekend, Si.
Okay. Yes. So let you know, God Energy getting ready to have a powerful build right now. You getting ready to get it in.
Absolutely.
You know? And so yeah, I'm waiting on him to get in the room.
Yeah, till he get here, Si. I gotta say this. The boy was getting his head bust in last night, Si.
Who, the Cap?
Yeah, Cap, man. And I know I left it not on his head because I pulled up on Cap on TikTok this morning. He was still in there talking about that Star of David.
Oh, so man, you got him.
That left a knot on me. I'm knowing for a fact it did. You know, it's a lot of stuff I have for Cap, but I'm gonna bring it all out in presentation. I'm glad he hooked this up the way he hooked this up because yeah, it's looking bad. It's looking real bad.
I think Reggie got a little something off too last night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Reggie got a little something off too. But Captain tried to downplay it like it wasn't really nothing.
Yes, God Energy, the same thing. I mean, to be honest, he outside of the scriptural stuff, because he go wiggle his way through that scripture all day. That's why I want to do the scripture dance with him, the Hebrew shuffle. He can do the Hebrew shuffle with you all day. Right. But when it came down to actual history, the ISUPK don't got no scholars within their group. They don't got no PhD. They don't got no doctorate. And that showed yesterday. He ain't know nothing about the historical background of Israel itself.
All right. So I'm gonna say peace to you. I'm gonna put you in the back right quick. We finally got our brother up in here right now. And then I'm going to open up the panel later on. So peace to you, brother. All right. God Energy, what it is, man? What's happening?
Peace, peace. Is this the right link that I need?
Yeah, that's the one. You right here. You in here.
All right, all right.
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about it. What you gonna deal with today? What you gonna bring the people today? Let them know what you getting ready to bring them.
Yeah, so what I'm dealing with is the out of Africa reality, right? It's been called a scientific theory, labeled a scientific theory, but through all of the evidence, the genetic evidence, the physical evidence, skeletal remains, out of Africa has been firmly proven, right? So I'm doing this to update our verbiage and to familiarize the people on the science of haplogroups and genetics, archaeogenetics, paleogenetics. Right. So this gets into how we all talk about the black person was first all over the planet. You know, we are the originators all over the planet, from Africa to China to the Americas. This is the hard data, the hard science that shows that. So we can prove that in a scholastic way, because we know we were here first. We know we populated the planet first. Here's how we do it in an academic and scholastic way.
Okay, so family, you already heard it. I think this is going to be the bomb right here. So let's stay tuned. We coming in at you. We coming at you.
Yeah, the HOK is the toughest environment. And you're at your own risk is the toughest environment. The HOK is the toughest environment. Yeah, stay strong, don't cry. It's the toughest environment. Yeah. No handouts here. You have to earn your respect. And when you do, you make they ass regret. They call it the toughest. And the title is earned from the bridges we crossed and the lessons we learned. In a cool-blooded kingdom, a concrete cage. Muslim, Christian, Israelites step on the stage. I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. In a cool-blooded kingdom, sa.neter created. HOK, where you can't fake it. The HOK is where you fight back. No room for error, no window attack. It's a masterclass, how you handle the heat. Where the pedigree is written on the concrete streets. Toughest environment, yeah, we know the score. Locked in on debate and asking for more. The HOK is the toughest environment. Enter at your own risk, it's the toughest environment. The HOK is the toughest environment. Stay strong, don't cry. It's the toughest environment. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man. We just getting ready. As y'all hear the music, we just getting ready, putting things together so we can go in. Are you ready, my brother?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I'm gonna be able to, you know what I mean, view it and give the presentation. So I just want to make sure we got the right thing.
You see it, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, let me know what's going on.
So yeah, we're gonna get into this evidence. We're gonna use multiple types of sources. We could get right into the presentation. So next slide. So this is
Yes, go ahead. You can start, brother. Start your show.
Go ahead to the first slide. You gotta go to the first slide.
Yeah, but do you want to put it on the big one, the bigger screen, so they don't see the sides or something?
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that.
No, you gotta do it. I don't know how to do it. How I do that?
I can't do it from here. So you control everything. So if you push the presentation button, hit slideshow. At the top, I think it goes slideshow.
I see slideshow. There you go.
and go from beginning.
Yes. All right. I don't see it. I don't see
So
it.
if we just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna let you click through it if you don't mind.
Present. Is that it?
Nah, click to exit.
Okay.
Sa, we gonna just do this regular, okay?
Okay. All right. Got you. All right.
No
Brother.
problem. No problem. We go to the next slide.
Okay. So let's get it in then like this, y'all.
Yes, sir. So this says Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson. The introduction was written by John Henry Clark and a foreword by Runoko Rashidi. Right? So it says there were many evolutionists before Darwin, but with the publication of The Origin of Species in 1859, Darwin made the theory of evolution intellectually respectable. Most of Darwin's contemporaries favored the continent of Asia as the birthplace of the human race. But Darwin suggested that Africa was most likely to have been the cradle of mankind. Quote, we are naturally led to inquire, said he, where was the birthplace of man? In each great region of the world, the living mammals are closely related to the extinct species of the same region. It is therefore probable that Africa was formerly inhabited by extinct apes closely allied to the gorilla and chimpanzee, and as these two species, next slide, are now man's nearest allies, it is somewhat more probable that our early progenitors lived on the African continent than elsewhere. And that's from Descent of Man, page 520. Next slide. So, right, what is the new evidence found? Hold on, back up one slide, sir. So this is new fossil evidence, new fossils from Jebel el-Rud, Morocco, and the Pan-African origin of Homo sapiens. Right, so the origin of Homo sapiens is a Pan-African event. Next slide. So they are confirming what Darwin was saying, right? It says fossil evidence points to an African origin of Homo sapiens from a group called either Homo heidelbergensis or Homo rhodesiensis. However, the exact place and time of emergence of Homo sapiens remains obscure because the fossil record is scarce and the chronological age of many key specimens remains uncertain. In particular, it is unclear whether the present-day modern morphology rapidly emerged approximately 200,000 years ago among early representatives of Homo sapiens or evolved gradually over the last 4,000 years. Next slide. So here's a brief view of the hominin species, right? You have early humans up there, right? You have Australopithecus at the top. So the green is the Pithecines, right? The blue are the hominins that can be considered human. So all the way from Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, Homo ergaster, right? Homo naledi, Homo rhodesiensis, all of these are considered human. All of them with the blue next to them are considered human. So Homo habilis was a human. Homo erectus was a human. Homo neanderthalis, all humans. We designate the species Homo sapiens sapien. Next slide.
Let me ask you first. Where would Lucy be? In what category? Where's she at?
Lucy would be related to Australopithecus, right? All the way up in the green and orange.
Okay.
Lucy would not be considered human.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
Next slide. So this is from Yuval Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Mankind. And this is a facsimile, right? It says our siblings according to speculative reconstruction. So these are reconstructions. This one right here is specifically Homo rudolfensis of East Africa. On the next slide, you'll see Homo erectus and Homo neanderthalis. Next slide. So this is Homo erectus on the left and Homo neanderthalis on the right. And you can see Homo neanderthalis has very specific features that mark its Eurasian morphology. The hair you see a protruding of the face in the middle area. The nose is very prominent. That is prognatism. So the Neanderthals had a very prominent mid-facial prognathism. Next slide. So back to the study, it says the Arud fossils currently represent, to our knowledge, the most securely dated evidence of the early phase of Homo sapiens evolution in Africa, right? So this is the earliest phase, and they do not simply appear as intermediate between African archaic Middle Pleistocene forms, those are other hominins, and recent modern humans, right? So they're not just an intermediary. It says, even approximately 300,000 years ago, their facial morphology is almost indistinguishable from that of recent modern humans, right? So they're very close to recent modern humans. And that facial morphology is the bone structure, the craniofacial metrics that we've been talking about. That's why even on the front of the article, right, the article here, it has depicted the bone structure of the face, because this is what's being used to determine morphology, ethnic grouping, right? So it says corroborating the interpretations of the fragmentary specimen from Floresbad, South Africa. Next slide. So it says, when compared to the large, robust, prognathic faces of Neanderthals, like I was just saying, or older Middle Pleistocene forms, the facial morphologies of early modern humans and recent modern humans are very distinctive. Meaning when you compare a Neanderthal facial morphologies to Homo sapien facial morphologies, it's very distinctive. The two have a stark contrast. The face is relatively short for recent modern humans and retracted under the brain case. Facial structures and are coronally oriented, and the inforbital areas is an inflection type, displaying curvatures along the horizontal, sagittal, and coronal profiles. So all of these metrics on how you measure the face is what gives you your phenotypes. So this is this is why this is important in distinguishing human population groups and what they look like, what ethnic groups they were a part of and representative of. All these metrics or measurements of the bones in the face. So this is important. This pattern, which may include some primitive retentions, strongly influences the morphology of the maxilla and the zygomatic bone. Our morphometric analysis clearly distinguishes archaic Middle Pleistocene humans and Neanderthals from recent modern humans. So archaic Middle Pleistocene humans and Neanderthals represent the other hominin species. And when they say recent modern humans, that's Homo sapiens sapien. So by contrast, all the possible reconstructions of the new facial remains of Arud 10 fall well within recent modern human variations, as does Arud 1. Next slide, please.
Before I move on to the next slide, religious people don't deal with this type of information.
No.
Like Hebrew Israelites, they believe in God's creation, and it's just crazy. The Muslims, they don't believe in this.
Yeah.
They believe in Allah stuff.
Yeah, this undoes a lot of beliefs that they have about human origin.
Science, right?
Yeah. And this is what a reconstruction of those early modern humans would look like. Based off of all of the craniometrics and morphologies, facial morphologies that were mentioned previously, based off of those metrics of all of those bones, this is what the facial reconstruction of early modern humans would look like. So this would have been the ancestors to the Khoisan people, the Pygmy people, the Bantu people, right? The ancestral North Africans. This is what the ancestral group would have looked like. Next slide. So aside from craniometric analysis, right, the measurements of the bones, the osteological analysis, we're going to deal with DNA a lot. Right. So in the identifying of the DNA, you have single nucleotide polymorphisms, which is a germline substitution of a single nucleotide at a specific location on the genome. So if you look there, those hexagon shapes, the different color hexagons that are labeled cytosine, guanine, adenine, that's a nucleotide, a single nucleotide, right? So what is an allele? Allele is a variant of a sequence of nucleotides at a particular location or locus on a DNA molecule. right? So a sequence of those nucleotides equal an allele. Next slide. So now we have haplotypes and haplogroups. Haplogroups are what we're going to use to carry the narrative and chart the migration of peoples in this presentation. So a haplotype is a group of alleles, right, in an organism that are inherited together from a single parent. So in the graphic next to the words, on that top layer, you see it says the adenine is next to the thymine. That link is an allele, right? So then a group of those links that are depicted there, that is a haplotype. So what is a haplogroup? A haplogroup is a group of similar haplotypes that share a common ancestor with a single nucleotide polymorphism mutation, right? So a haplogroup is a group of haplotypes. That depiction right there, that graphic, is a haplotype. Why? Because it is a combination of those links that are alleles. Those alleles are made up of those hexagon shapes named nucleotides. The adenine, that's green, is a single nucleotide. The thymine, that's magenta, is a single nucleotide. So a chain of those nucleotides is an allele. A group of those allele chains is a haplotype. And multiples of those haplotypes are called a haplogroup. Next slide, please. So the human Y chromosome phylogenetic tree, that's the paternal group, right? The paternal haplogroup is broken down from A to B to C to D through the alphabet, starting from earliest antiquity, right? So A would be the oldest, and then it would progress. So this is from a revised root. This is from the phylogenetic article, a revised root for the Y chromosomal phylogenetic tree, the origin of patrilineal diversity in Africa. It says these lineages A0 and A1 may have emerged somewhere between Central and Northwest Africa. So they're trying to pinpoint the origin and the location of this basal haplogroup, base haplogroup. Next slide. So it continues, the highest frequencies of haplogroup A have been found reported amongst the Khoisan of South Africa, Beta Israel, and Nilo-Saharans from Sudan. So look, sa.neter, if the Hebrew Israelites are saying that we're from Shem, we're from the Middle East, Beta Israel, meaning the African Hebrews in Beta Israel in the Nile Valley, they are of the A haplogroup. The A haplogroup is the most indigenous African haplogroup there is. Right. So that proves that Beta Israel and those Ethiopian Jews and those East African Beta Israel Hebrews are converts, because genetically they are linked to the oldest African indigenous haplogroup, which is the A haplogroup. Puts them in the same family as the Khoisans. And we know the Khoisans is the oldest human population on the planet found in Africa. Next slide, please. So this is why they don't deal with this stuff, Sa, because it disproves the whole Genesis narrative. The clade achieves its highest modern frequencies in the Bushman hunter-gatherer populations of South Africa, followed closely by many Nilotic groups in Eastern Africa. However, haplogroup A's oldest subclades are exclusively found in Central Northwest Africa, where it, and by extension, the patrilineal ancestors of modern humans, is believed to have originated. So they're pointing to a northwestern origin for the origin of the A haplogroup and the human Y chromosome paternal lineage, right? So the lineage of fathers for the whole planet is pointing to Northwest Africa. So this is speaking to the Africanness of North Africa, which has always come into question because they try to make it seem like Arab-looking types or Anatolian-looking types have always been in North Africa. All the genetic evidence is proven different. Next slide. So this is from the paper Molecular Dissection of the Basal Clades in the Y Human Chromosome Phylogenetic Tree, which also supports the hypothesis of an origin in the northwestern quadrant of Africa, of the African continent, for A1b, or the A0 haplogroup. So this is another phylogenetic study that supports the hypothesis that Northwest Africa was the origin for this basal haplogroup of all humanity. Next slide. So this is from Y chromosome sequence variations and the history of human populations. Haplogroup A3B2 is common among the South Sudanese, 53%, especially the Dinka Sudanese, where 61.5% of them tested for A3B2. So you see how A0 and A1, the phenotypes associated with that was Khoisan. But by the time you get further downstream of the A haplogroup, A3B2 gives you the Sudanese Nilotic type, the Dinka type. So right there within the A haplogroup, you have the extreme variations of the light brown short Khoisan and the very dark chocolate brown tall Nilotics. So right there within the A haplogroup, you have so much diversity in the phenotypes of humans, and we haven't even diverged from the A haplogroup yet, just to show how much diversity comes with gene expression. Next slide. Haplogroup A3B2 also has been observed in another sample of South Sudanese population at a frequency of 45%. A3B2 has also been found at very low frequencies in a sample of Egyptian males, 39%. So when we talk about the blackness and Africanness of North Africa and Kemet, right? The genetic evidence is pointing to a strong expression of blackness there. 39% of the Egyptian males in this sample were of the same haplogroup of the very dark, very Nilotic A3B2 Sudanese and Dinka types. So when you talk about the peoples and populations that made up Kemet and the phenotypes and genetics that were mixing around, this very African, very black, very Nilotic type is just one of the African phenotypes and genotypes that was circulating through Kemet. Next slide, please. So this is from clinal patterns of human Y chromosome diversity in continental Italy and Greece, are dominated by drift and founder effects. So this is a phylogenetic study about Greece, right? A3A2, formerly A3B2, as mentioned on the previous slide, has been found at very low frequency in some Mediterranean islands. Without testing for any specific subclade, haplogroup A has also been found in a sample from Greeks from Mytilene on the Aegean island of Lesbos, right? So I know a lot of us are familiar with the Lesbos coins that get shown to prove that there was an African or Black presence in Greece, right? These are different variations of those Lesbos coins. So it's not even a one-off. There are multiples and multiples of these coins that were found depicted Black type peoples, African type peoples, Negroid type peoples. Well, in this phylogenetic paper that I just presented, we now have the genetics to explain these very famous Lesbos coins that a lot of us are familiar with. It's the A3B2 haplogroup gene expression that has been tested and found on this island of Lesbos. That's why you see these figures on this coins, right? So now we finally have the phylogenetic research to explain the ancestry behind these Lesbos coins. Next slide. Now, could this be why Hercules was depicted Black, right? This is a 1st century Roman painting. It can be found in the Basilica of Heraclium. And this is of Hercules and Telephus. And Hercules is the Black man standing there with the X over his, hind parts there. Just very Greek. You know how they got down, right? But this ancestry and African origins and genetics in Greece, in the Aegean, that has been tested in Lesbos. Could this be why Hercules was depicted as a Black man in the 1st century, whom he was also depicted as a Black man 500 years before that by the Greeks as well? Next slide. So that was the A haplogroup. This is the B haplogroup. This is from new binary polymorphisms, shape, and increased resolution of the human Y chromosomal haplogroup tree. Right, the B clade is almost entirely restricted to sub-Saharan Africa. B chromosomes are found at their highest frequency amongst pygmies, right, with some lineages being virtually restricted to these ethnic groups. Next slide. So this is signatures of the pre-agricultural peopling process in sub-Saharan Africa as revealed by the phylogeny of early Y chromosome lineages. And it says, Rare in both northern and western Africa, the distribution of haplogroup B in the rest of the continent can be described by that of its two main subclades, B2A and B2B. Next slide. The former, B2A, appears to be associated with food-producing communities and populations in contact with them, as also previously observed, and it is present at low frequencies in all sub-Saharan areas. This gentleman is a pygmy himself from the Mbuti people. It says here, in contrast, B2B is mostly present in foraging communities in Eastern and Central Africa. So B2A is associated with food-producing pygmies and populations in contact with food-producing populations, while B2B is present in the foraging communities in Eastern and Central Africa. The different geographical distributions of haplogroups A and B2B are mirrored at the population level. So little or no haplogroup A is present in pygmies and Eastern African Khoisan speakers, whereas B2B is commonly found in these populations. So what they're trying to say is that where haplogroup A is not found, haplogroup B2B is found. Next slide. So it says, we dated the Eastern and Western pygmy separation because the pygmies are divided into two larger groups, the Eastern pygmies and the Western pygmies. So using the divergence between the B2B4B and the B2B2 clades, these estimates span similar time intervals and suggested a separation time of 10 to 15,000 years ago. So this is during the Neolithic era. Right, this is right after the glacial maximum. This is right after the Younger Dryas period. So broadly overlapping with the generally more ancient estimates provided by mtDNA. Next slide. So the African pygmies, Central African rainforest hunter-gatherers, as they're known. The Khoisan are known as South African hunter-gatherers. The pygmies are known as Central African rainforest hunter-gatherers, and they're grouped into ethnic groups native to Central Africa, mostly the Congo Basin. They live a forager and hunter-gatherer lifestyle, and they're divided into three roughly geographic groups. So the Western, the Bambenga or Mbenga, are found in Cameroon, Gabon, the Republic of Congo, Central African Republic. The first gentleman from this slide was a Bambenga. The Eastern are the Bambuti. I shouted out the Bambuti. And that last group of people on the last slide are known as the Twa or the Batwa of Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is the same Twa that you find mentioned in Kemet. This is the same Twa that Bess is representative of. So just through haplogroup A and B, we've already touched on how African Kemet was, right? With 30-something% of the males, Egyptian males, that it was in the sample tested for A3B2B. And then right here, the Batwa or the Twa, the pygmies of the B haplogroup of the Central African rainforest are talked about all are replete through the Egyptian text. So through this, we can identify the cultures that we study and love so much. I think it's important to know that Bess is representative of the Twa, and that the Twa are the pygmies, and it's those same Twa or Batwa that can be found today in the Central African rainforest, and we can know their haplogroups. So right off the bat, we see that Kemet was already comprised of the basal haplogroups you find on the African continent, the A haplogroup and B haplogroup. And we haven't even gotten to the East African and Bantu associated E haplogroup yet. Next slide. So this is why in the introduction to African civilization, at the bottom there, it says the first migration was of primitive little men known as pygmies. Afterward came waves of Nilotic types that spread out over the world. Right, so we just identified these early pygmy groups, and the first humans on the planet were of very short stature. Those Khoisan of the A haplogroup, very short. The pygmies of the B haplogroup, very short. So it makes sense that the first peoples to migrate out of Africa would have been of this very short stature. Next slide. It goes on to say, Africans and people of African descent migrated to other parts of the earth. The direct descendants of early Africans went to Asia Minor, that's Turkey. They went to Arabia, India, China, Japan, and the East Indies. All of these areas to this day show an African strain. Africans and people of African descent went also to Turkey, Palestine, Greece, and other countries into Europe. From Gibraltar, they went into Spain, Portugal, France, England, Wales, and Ireland. And this is exactly what the haplogroup and the genetic evidence suggests. This is exactly what the archaeological or osteological evidence shows. Next slide, please. So this is a brief overview of the out of Africa expansion and migration of peoples, right? And you can see they take land routes through most of these areas, and almost all of these areas can be reached through land routes. So we're going to get into these different areas. The major areas is right outside in Arabia, 100,000 years ago. Also up in Europe, also down in Melanesia and Australia, where it says 60,000, 50,000 years ago. But the story expands further. So let's get into it. Next slide. So these early groups to leave Africa, the scenario of non-Neanderthal admixed modern human populations, which is basal to other Eurasians. So we're talking about modern humans that did not mix with Neanderthals. They are basal to other Eurasians, meaning they are the base population that resides in Africa is plausible, right? So in particular, North Africa is a strong candidate as a location for the emergence of basal Eurasians, right? So these Africans that did not mix with Neanderthals that went into Asia are from North Africa. Natufians who share craniometric, right, the measurement of the skull, Natufians who share craniometric affinity with North Africans or sub-Saharan Africans. So they're making synonymous North Africans and sub-Saharan Africans because the sub-Saharan African and North African are the same in these times, because the first populations, the ancestral populations of North Africa is the same as the sub-Saharan African. It's important to know that. So it says Natufians who share craniometric affinity with North Africans or sub-Saharan Africans and were of Y chromosomal haplogroup E, which likely originated in Africa, are of basal Eurasian ancestry. And it's because of this North African origin of the basal Eurasians and North African origin of the Natufian African genetics. Basal Eurasians had little to possibly no Neanderthal admixture. That's important to know, that these basal Eurasians, who are genetically an ancestral group to all other Eurasians, this specific group had no Neanderthal admixture. And if you look at the graphic there, the highlighted orange area in the Arabian Peninsula, that's the homeland of the basal Eurasians. While up in the green area, getting towards the Levant, that's where basal Eurasians or their relatives mixed with Neanderthals. So those two locations are important to know on the map. Next slide, please. So this is from Projecting Ancient Ancestry in Modern Day Arabians and Iranians. A key role of the past exposed Arabo-Persian Gulf. So that's that area that was highlighted in orange or red that I was talking about. Arabians also displayed the highest level of the basal Eurasian lineage of all tested modern day populations. So Arabians still carry this ancestral basal Eurasian lineage, this ancestral North African basal Eurasian lineage, a signal that was maintained even after correcting for possible bias due to recent sub-Saharan African input. So they even accounted for the fact that in recent times, sub-Saharan Africans might have mixed in over there. But it's interesting and very telling that they had to account for sub-Saharan African recent introgression, meaning that original basal Eurasian is African that they're looking for as well. So it's the Africanness in these Arabians that they're looking for. That's why they had to account for recent African introgression, because they want to get only the sample of ancient African basal Eurasian lineage. That's important. Next slide. So this is from a book from Ranoka Rashidi, Kush and the Origins of Mesopotamia. So it says in 1926 and again in 1928, right, the Field Museum and Oxford University conducted joint excavations in northern Sumer. At the conclusion of their work, they pronounced the earliest historical crania, hypercocephalic, are from Jemdet Nasser, 18 miles northeast of Kish, and those from the Y Trench at Kish. The forehead is retreating, the brow ridges are always prominent, and the cheekbones rather wide. The nose is broad, in some cases inclining to extreme platyrrhine, right? So although the face has seldom survived, this is the type described by Sergi Giuffrida and Fleur and named the Eurafrican type, right? So this is the African in Europe, the Eurafrican type, right? Signature of the basal Eurasian. So in an additional publication on the excavations at Kish, T.K. Penniman listed 3 distinct cranial groups. Next slide. So the first cranial group is the Eurafrican. In ancient times, the type is found in Mesopotamia and Egypt and may be compared with the comb capel skulls, right? It is possibly identical with men who lived in the high desert west of the Nile in Paleolithic times, right? And is the type seen in the familiar portrait statues of Ramesses II. So this is the Eurafrican type, the basal Eurasian type. So it says, secondly, there is the Mediterranean type, whose variants occur all the way from Java through India and Mesopotamia and on both sides of the Mediterranean. These people are of medium stature with complexion and hair like those of the Eurafrican. The Mediterranean type has hair and complexion like those of the Eurafrican, right? The basal Eurasian, to which race they are allied. Right. And when they say allied in these terms of ethnology, they mean related to. Right. So the Eurafrican is the closest to which the Mediterranean type is related to, with dark eyes and oval faces. Right. So they have small, ill-filled dolichocephalic skulls, which is the skull shape associated with Africoid peoples, with Black peoples. Right. Where the skull is longer from forehead to occipital bund than it is from ear to ear. So it says, they have small, ill-filled dolichocephalic skulls with brow ridges poorly developed or absent, bulging occipitus orbits, usually horizontal ellipses, broad noses, rather feeble jaws, and slightly sinewy bodies. In ancient times, their distribution was much the same as today. Right, so the first 2 types are just Black peoples, right? The Mediterranean type is analogous to the Eurafrican. The Eurafrican they're describing are these basal Eurasian peoples. Thirdly, there is the Armenoid type. So these are non-Black peoples related to Anatolian farmer types. So thirdly, there is the Armenoid type, whose relatives are found all over the Eurasiatic plateau and mountains from the Himalayas through the Persian highlands and Asia Minor. So when they show pictures of Sumerians, and they show the people with the monobrow, like from the Gutians of Larsa and Lagash, that's these Armenoid types, right? When you see those monuments from Sumeria that are from Larsa and Lagash, the people known as the Gutians, those are the Armenoid type that they're talking about. Next slide. Kushite Origins of Sumer and Elam by Ranoka Rashidi. Pardon me, that is the source here. And Ranoka Rashidi adds, we can find no physical difference between the crania of the Eurafrican and the Mediterraneans referred to in their statements, right? And the crania of the African and Asiatic Blacks of today. So they find no difference between the Eurafrican, the Mediterranean type, and the Black African types of Africa and Eurasia. This data, albeit limited, leaves no doubt as to the racial identity of the region's early population. Of the 14 crania from the Y Trench at Kish, which Penniman examined, he described 2 as brachycephalic, 8 as dolichocephalic, that's Eurafrican, and 2 Armenoid and 2 mixed. Buxton and Rice studies 26 crania, of which, according to their report, consisted of 17 Eurafricans, 5 Mediterraneans, so really that's 22 black people out of 26, who are clearly Austrics, and 4 Armenoids. And that Austric associated with the Mediterranean is going to be important later. So incredibly, they concluded there was no traces of Negroid or Africoid blood, because Eurafrican doesn't equal African, right? Eurafrican doesn't equal Africoid, even though African is in the word Eurafrican. So fortunately, we are in position to form our own conclusions, and we can only come to the conclusion that we are simply dealing with ethnocentric euphemisms for Black people. So in examining this, Runoko Rashidi has stated here for us that when they use terms like Eurafrican and when they use terms like Mediterranean type, these are ethnocentric euphemisms for Black people, because they don't want to just come out and say these were Black people related to Africans and look what Africans did and were capable of, even though we enslaved them. So next slide, please. Which would lend itself as to why the term black-headed ones or black-headed people was used by the Sumerians with the term Sagigas, right? And in Akkadian, you have the same rendering of black or dark-headed peoples in Salmat Kakadi. So all of this blackness, this basal Eurasian African ancestry that was in the Arabian Peninsula, in Sumeria, this gives cultural context as to why these very same peoples descended from unmixed Neanderthal, North African ancestry, these basal Eurasians in the Arabian Peninsula, then becoming Sumerians, would call themselves black-headed people, Sagiga, Salmat Kakadi. Next slide. So it says, in a direct reference to Lower Mesopotamia itself, pioneer African-American historian Drusilla Dungy Houston, shout out to Drusilla Dungy Houston and her work, Wonderful Ethiopians of the Kushite Empire. She quotes Diodorus as commenting that the Kushite Ethiopians were the absolute governing class in politics. They commanded the armies and held the offices of state. From them came the ruling families of Babylon. And most recently noted, Sierra Leone historian George O. Cox mentions that Kush colonized Mesopotamia around 2800 BC. Kushite subjects now settled in Babylonia as overlords of Mesopotamia and instructed there what the world has since come to know as Babylonian civilization. It should be noted that the migration of which Cox writes was simply a reinforcement by Kushites of earlier blacks, i.e. Grimaldis and Austrics. Now, these specifically that they're talking about are these basal Eurasian types that I'm talking about. So right here, Runoko Rashidi acknowledges that when the Kushites move into Mesopotamia, they are following in the footsteps of basal Eurasians, people like the Grimaldi type and these Austric types who had entered the region in Paleolithic and Neolithic times. So next slide, let's get back to Paleolithic times. Not surprisingly, Eastern Arabians were also the ones with highest similarity with Ibero-Maurusians, who are a North African population that we're going to talk about in the second part of this presentation on Friday, who were so far the best proxy for basal Eurasians amongst the known ancient specimens. So the best proxy for basal Eurasian genetics are these Ibero-Maurusians, and it's because of the location in North Africa. Because the basal Eurasians are from North Africa, the later Ibero-Maurusian North African population maintained genetics synonymous enough to give you a good representation for basal Eurasians. Next slide, please. So the highest levels of basal Eurasian lineage found in the Eastern Arabian Peninsula reinforce previous genetic and archaeological evidence of early human settlement in the exposed basin of the Arabo-Persian Gulf. So what we call the Persian Gulf right now is a body of water that separates Arabia from the eastern coast of the western coast of Iran. But that body of water wasn't always there. and there was landmass there. And in this area, they're saying is the heartland of where Basal Eurasians settled. So it says these results, by dislocating the geographic origin of Basal Eurasian population groups from the Near East to the eastern part of the Arabian Peninsula, it reconciles better with the Neanderthal modern human interbreeding event having occurred probably in the Levant. Right, so the Basal Eurasians are not mixed with Neanderthal. So their homeland being in the Arabo-Persian Gulf makes sense, right? Because right there in the Levant, on the eastern side, on the western side of Arabia, admixture with Neanderthals was happening, right? So for this Basal Eurasian non-mixed group, the Western Arabian-Persian Gulf fits. Next slide. The Eastern Arabian-Persian Gulf, pardon me. So going to the Levant, right? In this paper, Levantine cranium from Minot Cave in Israel foreshadows the first European modern humans, right? Because if these Basal Eurasians are the first group out of Africa, eventually they will become the first Europeans as well. So these skulls found in the Levant Minot Cave, where Neanderthal admixture was happening, they also foreshadow the first European modern humans. Next slide, please. And it says the original cave entrance was blocked following the collapse of the roof, probably between 30,000 and 15,000 years ago. The archaeological evidence from the cave indicates two major cultural events. The first is associated with the early dispersal of anatomically modern humans during the Middle Pleistocene, best represented in the Near East by the Kavseh and School fossils. And this was around 120 and 90,000 years ago. So humans had an initial dispersal around this time, but it did not work. They did not survive. That's why there are two out of Africa events. This first one from 120,000 to 90,000 years ago, humans spread out. They spread out almost over the entire globe, and the entire population died out. So the remnant modern human populations are not descended from this first initial group that this first event is associated with. But the second corresponds to the colonization of the Eastern Mediterranean region by modern humans around 45,000 years ago in the Upper Paleolithic. So this is the out of Africa event that gives rise to the rest of the modern human populations around the world. So it's presumably replacing the Neanderthals. For example, fossils from Amud and Kebra in the region. So replacing those Neanderthals that were there, these incoming modern humans. Next slide. So it says, Kavseh, a nearest neighbor analysis based on the full procrust distance links the Minot specimen with recent African skulls and with Central European Upper Paleolithic. So these skulls that they found in Europe are also related to African skulls and the Upper Paleolithic European skulls, right? And there's a picture of the skulls right there on the right. It says the Minot 1 Calvaria is similar in overall shape to early Upper Paleolithic European skulls. So listen to all these terms associated with the craniometrics, the measurements of the skull. All of these things matter, and all of these detailed metrics and proportions matter in distinguishing different ethnic groups. So this implies that the Minot people could have given rise to the first modern humans to colonize Europe successfully. Thus, the anatomical features used to support the assimilation model in Europe, meaning Neanderthal and anatomically modern humans interbreeding, it might not have been inherited from European Neanderthals, but may rather have originated from earlier Levantine populations of Neanderthals. The possible admixture between modern humans and Neanderthals has been extensively discussed. So next slide. So what they're saying is the admixture between modern humans and Neanderthals, that those genetics could have been inherited from Neanderthals and modern humans mixing in the Levant, and not Neanderthals and modern humans mixing in Europe. So it says again, thus, This new information for the Neanderthal modern human interbreeding event can help to refine the geographic source of the basal Eurasian ancestors. The presence in Israeli archaeological sites of modern humans such as Sukul and Kavseh and Neanderthals at Tabun and Kebra, right? So they just described modern humans at Sukul and Kavseh, and then Neanderthals at Tabun and Kebra, dating between 50 and 120,000 years ago, provides evidence that modern humans and Neanderthals overlap geographically and temporally in the Levant. So the findings at these two different locations show that modern humans were in the Levant and Neanderthals were in the Levant in the same place at the same time. No such evidence was found in southern parts of Southwest Asia. So this is Arabia, right? So you don't see that overlapping, right, of geography and temporal range with Neanderthals and modern humans in the southwestern parts of Asia. That's Arabia. So it says, although absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Next slide, please. So this right here, this source is from the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology and Science. And right here, this shows the Neanderthal ancestry percentage of modern humans. And you see there, the graph shows that 0, meaning that yellowish green, is 0 Neanderthal admixture. And we see where that is, right? Africa, the African continent is the only continent, is the only landmass, is the only geography where you see 0 Neanderthal ancestry, right? So this is a genetic fact. This isn't just hearsay. This isn't just centrism when people say that. It is a calculated genetic fact. But when you look here, you clearly see clusters of Neanderthal admixture when you look closely and you study this. And in this clustering, it is a defining factor in the rest of the human story. Next slide, please. Next slide. And thank you, sa.neter. Shout out to you for helping me out with this, being on point with the production. Now, next slide, the other way. Hold on, back a couple more. The one before that. There's the cluster right there of Neanderthal admixture. So the cluster, right above in northern Arabia, Iraq, the Levant, and Anatolia, that first cluster there. And if you notice, in South Arabia, you don't see the clustering. In South Arabia, that's where those basal Eurasians were. So when you look at this plotting of Neanderthal ancestry from the Max Planck Institute, it completely supports showing how these basal Eurasians, the unmixed basal Eurasians who did not mix with Neanderthals, were right there in southern Arabia. And these 3 hotspots you see, right, in North Arabia, in the Indian subcontinent, and in Southeast Asia, these play an important part in the human development and the human haplogroup phylogeny. Next slide, please. Because when you look at the maternal haplogroup, so this is the mothers, the haplogroups of the mothers, the M haplogroup, it migrates out of East Africa into Southern Arabia. This is basal Eurasians, right? These are basal Eurasians and basal Eurasian territory. But look, right there in North Arabia, the Levant, and Anatolia, you see a haplogroup explosion, as I like to say. You see a haplogroup diversification, and right in the Indian subcontinent, more haplogroup diversification. And look again in Southeast Asia, more haplogroup diversification. So there is complete correlation between the hotspots where Neanderthals and humans admixed and hotspots for these haplogroup explosions and diversification. Next slide. And when you analyze the male phylogeny, the C haplogroup completely correlates with this migration path and haplogroup explosions from the admixture with Neanderthals. Right over there to the left is the Levant, North Arabia, and Anatolia. And you see a lot of diversification starts to happen with the C haplogroup starting right in that same area, right in the area where humans and Neanderthals first would have been intermingling. Right when you get there, you see all of this diversification of the C haplogroup going on. And then the C haplogroup continues further through the Indian subcontinent, and then the last circle in Southeast Asia. So you see a correlation from the Max Planck Institute's diagram of hotspots and concentrations for Neanderthal admixture. It completely correlates with the M haplogroup migration path and the haplogroup explosions that occur, which completely correlates with the C haplogroup migration pattern through those very same areas. Next slide, please. So continuing, it says the basal Eurasians and the Neanderthals and the Neanderthal admix groups were genetically close. So the basal Eurasians and their cousins that mixed with Neanderthals were genetically close. So they most likely descended from the same African migrant group. They did split somewhere. Did the split occur in Southwest Asia after the out of Africa migration through either the north or southern route? Or alternatively, are our data suggesting that the group split earlier in Africa? In the latter scenario, where the group split in Africa, the subset that gave rise to the basal Eurasian branch, these are the ones that did not mix. Basal Eurasian means no mixing, right? So the basal Eurasian branch probably followed the southern route, taking refugium in the exposed basin of the Arabo-Persian Gulf, while the direct ancestors of Europeans and Asians followed the northern route, mixed with Neanderthals, and hence moved forward, further splitting towards Europe and Asia. So as soon as they leave out of Africa, the basal Eurasians who did not mix took the southern route out of Africa, through Yemen, through Oman, through southern Arabia, and settled in the Arabo-Persian Gulf, never to mix with Neanderthals. But their cousins took the northern route through Kemet, through the Sinai, and they did mix with Neanderthals. And those peoples that mixed with Neanderthals would later become the ancestors of modern day Europeans and Asians. And from that area of admixture with Neanderthals, they would split and go to Europe and split and go to Asia. Next slide, please. And the carriers were the C haplogroup, right? So we've moved from the A haplogroup to the B haplogroup. Now we're finally at the C haplogroup with these basal Eurasians. And haplogroup CM130 seems to have come into existence shortly after single nucleotide polymorphism mutation M168 occurred for the first time, bringing the modern haplogroup CT into existence, from which haplogroup CF and in turn haplogroup C derived. This was probably at least 60,000 years ago. So it's these C haplogroup peoples that either stay in the Arabian Peninsula becoming non-mixed basal Eurasians, and some of them go north and they do mix with Neanderthals. And that admixed group splits and goes to Europe and Asia. Next slide. So to give you a figure of what these peoples look like, right? It would be these basal Eurasians. I'm using the Admanese peoples as a proxy for basal Eurasians. And it's so calculated as to why I used the Admanese people as basal Eurasians, plus Neanderthals. And this is a recreation of the Neanderthal face, which we see protrudes out. It's very prognathous, right? They carry mid-facial prognathism, or at the middle of the face, it protrudes outward, pushing the nose forward, pushing the mouth area more forward. And so the first humans out of Africa would be basal Eurasians. They meet Neanderthals. Next slide, please. And give rise to a group that I'm coining basal mulattoes. So this would be the first time that African people, Africoid peoples, mix with peoples not of African descent at all, mixed with Eurasian groups. The Neanderthals would be these Eurasians. So this would be the first time where African phenotypes are now mixed with phenotypes native to Eurasia, through these Neanderthals. So since science has accepted the term basal Eurasians for the unmixed Africans, it seems only fitting that when those basal Eurasian Africans mixed with Eurasian descended Neanderthals, the term used should have some sort of reference to that. So I'm calling them basal mulattoes just so we can have a reference for this mixed group. And this mixed group would have been carriers of the C1 and C2 haplogroups. So we can even put a genetic association with these groups. Next slide, please. And when we see memes like this, graphics like this, or do the research on these early European groups, we run across names like Sungir Man, Peking Man in Asia, Cheddar Man in England, that bust, that bronze bust or statue that sits alone by itself to the right there, that's called Stanky. That's called Stanky basal mulattoes. You see, that's why they are dark skinned, but they don't quite have African features, right? They have features that deviate from African. These are their Neanderthal Eurasian features, quite literally showing through. So this is the phenotypical expression of these mixed basal mulatto types. That's why they are dark skinned. Yes, we can see they're kind of Africoid. They got some blackness, but they also display these features that are clearly non-African. And they are Neanderthal Eurasian features that we see. Next slide. Quick. So the C1 and C2 haplogroup, like it says there, goes from Europe over to Asia. And the purple there, this is the group that travels over to Europe. The C2, that travels all the way through Asia. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the C1 haplogroup, as well as going to Asia, represents also the Aboriginal Australians. And it says up to 46% of Aboriginal Australian males carried either basal C paragroup or C1b2b paragroup or C1b2b1 before contact with significant immigration by Europeans. So 46% of Aboriginal Americans carried some form of the C haplogroup. So it says that is 20% of the Y chromosomes of 657 modern individuals, right? And this was before 56% of that sample were excluded as non-indigenous. But they were the C paragroup, and it was apparently carried by up to 2.7 of Aboriginal males, and 43% of the males carried CM347, which is C1b2b. So 43% of the males carried C1b2b, and 2.7% carried the basal C paragroup. So it says the other haplogroups of Aboriginal Australians is similar to Papuans and Negritos. So aside from the C haplogroup, the other haplogroups of the Australians correlate to haplogroups associated with the Papuans and Negritos, being haplogroup S and haplogroup M, which we will get to in part 2 on Friday. Next slide. So C1 is Aboriginal Australian. C2, next slide, please, goes through Asia and is Aboriginal American. So for the FBA. Right? So males carrying CM130 are believed to have migrated to the Americas some 6,000 to 8,000 years ago and was carried by Na-Dene speaking peoples into the Northwest Pacific coast of North America. So when we do the genetics, the ancestry.com test, we are not coming back as the C2 haplogroup. But the C2 haplogroup is the Aboriginal American haplogroup. The foundational Black Americans that first came to the Americas were of the C2 haplogroup. So we better be finding C2 and C2 subclades in our ancestry.com test, in our 23andMe test. But that's not what's coming up at all. Next slide. The Aurignacian are also, what does it say? Of the basal C1a paragroup, it was found in Upper Paleolithic Europeans at Goyet. This is the Aurignacian peoples. C1b was identified in prehistoric remains dating from 34,000 years before present, found in Russia and known as Kostenki. Kostenki, man, I showed before on the Basil Mulatto slide. So the Aurignacian, they were from Spain to Ukraine and all the places in between. Italy, Macedonia, France, Germany, Transylvania, right? And these Aurignacian peoples of Europe, these Paleolithic Europeans, they were of the C haplogroup as well. So not only is the C haplogroup Aboriginal Australian, not only is the C haplogroup Aboriginal American, the C haplogroup is also Aboriginal European. Next slide. And as early as 33,000 BCE, you find C1. They're finding sites with individuals from the C1 haplogroup dating as far back as 33,000. Next slide. And even up to 5,000 BC, they are also finding peoples of the C1 haplogroup. So these sites represent sites where the C1 haplogroup and its subclades were found. And from 33,000 and before, from even before 33,000 BCE and even up to 5,000 BCE, they are finding sites that date from 5,000 BCE in Europe of people with the C haplogroup. Right. So this is the late Chalcolithic age. This is the late Copper age, about to transition into the early Bronze age. The C1 Basal Eurasian black haplogroup is still being found in Europe. Next slide. So to give us a view of what these peoples look like, why am I so confidently calling them black? So we could reference the work Ancient and Modern Britons by David McRitchie. This is volume 1. It says, Mr. Samuel Lang, in his interesting revelation of the Katnissis, right? This is a group of people in Britain, imagined the earliest inhabitants of North Britain were kumbocephalic or boat-headed, approaching to a Negroid or Australian, rather than to a Mongol or Arctic type. So they're saying that these peoples of Britain were more akin to black-looking peoples, Negroid or Australian, as opposed to Asiatic type, Mongols or Arctic. Mongols meaning like classical Chinese, Arctic also being like the Inuit peoples that we see. So even the darker Asiatic type of peoples, these early Britons were even blacker than Inuit peoples, who are very tan, very melanated Asians. These Britons were more black and more Africoid, more Negroid than that. So it says again, he writes, this tribe of Aboriginal Britons must have more closely resembled the Australian or Tasmanian than the Laplander or Eskimo, right? And remember, Runoko Rashidi, when he talks about Kush and the colonization of Sumer and Elam in the craniological studies, he said that they resembled an Austric type. Right. So even them, you can make the distinctions. Even if you have black skulls and black craniofacial metrics, the details of these cranial metrics and facial metrics and morphologies are so detailed, they can differentiate that they're talking about the Australian black specifically. So the accuracy and detail of these measurements and morphologies is amazing. Next slide. So it says, but at any rate, there are several reasons for believing that the unidentified builders of our stone circles, that's Stonehenge, Karens, and Domans were dark-skinned peoples. And the races with which they have most similarity are Professor Huxley's Australoids and Negritos. So they're talking about Stonehenge being built by these dark-skinned peoples, right? The Domans, the rock-cut sepulchres and Domans that they have, built by dark-skinned peoples. Next slide. So it says, we know, says the writer of a small pamphlet on this subject, that the first inhabitants of Britain, let us say certain tribes of ancient Britons, and more especially those of the northern parts, were craniologically of a type approaching to the Negro or to the Australian race. So every time they talk about this blackness, they also specify it with the Australian. Next slide. Back one more. Yeah, it says the same eminent authority states in another place, but it's not the same person from that slide. So the way I put this together would be misleading. This doesn't relate to that other source. The same eminent authority states in another place, I shall be inclined to look among the Papuan race of New Guinea and New Holland for the nearest allies. Remember, that means nearest relation of men to whom the shell mounds of Europe once belonged. So in describing the people of the shell mounds of Europe, he says, I look to among the Papuan races of New Guinea. It says, of these people, he speaks in the following terms. In the Admin Islands, we know what they look like. In the peninsula of Malacca, in the Philippines, in the islands which stretch from Wallace's line eastward and southward, nearly parallel to New Caledonia. And finally, in Tasmania, men with dark skins and woolly hair occur. So these men with dark skins and woolly hair from Tasmania, from Australia, these Papuan races, this is who this person says the people of the shell mounds of Europe are closely related to. And the source here is quoted from Ethnological Society's Journal, Volume 2, page 121. Next slide. So these peoples, right? Yuval Noah Harari from the book, wrote the book Sapiens. It's these peoples that are going through the cognitive revolution, right? Who had built ivory figurine of a lion man or lioness woman from the Stadel cave in Germany, dating to 32,000 years ago. The body is of a human, but the head is lionine. So this is one of the first indisputable examples of art and probably of religion, right? And of the ability of the human mind to imagine things that do not readily exist. So the ability to mix the lion head with the human body shows a sense of creativity and abstract thought that is indicative of the cognitive revolution. Next slide. So it says, based on the research of Sir Arthur Keith, who studied Arab skeletal remains, again, dealing with the skeletal remains, the osteological analysis, skeletal remains of ancient and modern times, Dr. Thomas states, a proto-Negroid belt of mankind stretched across the ancient world from Africa to Malay. It says Hamitic peoples of Africa to the Dravidian peoples of India and to an intermediate dark peoples inhabiting the Arabian Peninsula. So geographically, they're trying to describe this belt of dark-skinned peoples. Next slide. And it is this C1 haplogroup that is this black belt, this proto-Negroid belt. And from the genetic evidence, as we saw with the C1, the C haplogroup is Aboriginal Australian, but it is also Aboriginal European through the Aurignacians. And what Ancient and Modern Britons has clearly illustrated for us is that not only are the Aboriginal Australians and Aurignacian Europeans of the same haplogroup, they are of the same phenotype. They look the same. So to look at the Tasmanian, to look at the Papuan, to look at the Aboriginal Australian is giving you a glimpse of what the Aurignacian literally looked like. You can get a proxy of what the Aurignacian literally looked like phenotypically by looking at the Tasmanian, by looking at the Papuan, by looking at the Aboriginal Australian. I think that's amazing. The past is still here with us. The Aurignacian phenotype has not gone away. It is still alive and breathing in the Papuans, in the Melanesians, in the Australoids. I think that's amazing. Next slide. So it says, Professor Thomas Henry Huxley thought that the Egyptians and the Dravidians of India could be traced back to a belt of dark brown men, back to this black belt, this dark brown belt, this proto-Negroid belt. So this is Professor Thomas Henry Huxley saying this. So this belt stretched from India to Spain in ancient times. According to Wells, H.G. Wells, this race of brunette brown folk spread even farther than India. They reached to the shores of the Pacific and they were everywhere, the beginners of what we call civilization. It is possible that these brunette peoples are, so to speak, the basic peoples of our modern world. That's from the Outline of History, page 139 by H.G. Wells. Next slide, please. And the basal Eurasians are, in fact, those people that he's talking about. So he is correct. It says, on looking at the map referred to, this is from Ancient and Modern Britons. On looking at the map referred to, it is seen that they consist of the whole Aboriginal population of Australia, of the natives of interior India, the Deccan, and of the inhabitants of the Middle Upper Egypt. Mr. Huxley, again, on the last slide, that was Introduction to African Civilization, mentioning Professor Thomas Henry Huxley. This is Ancient and Modern Britons again, where it says Mr. Huxley depicts the Australoids in the following words. The color of the skin is some shade of chocolate brown, and the eyes are very dark brown or black. The hair is usually raven black, fine and silky in texture, and it is never woolly, but usually wavy. Next slide. So he's talking about the six ethers, so to speak. Now here's a third book, right? Yuval Noah Harari and Sapiens. It says Sapiens takes readers on a sweeping tour of the history of our species. The author structures this ambitious journey around the three momentous events that have irrevocably shaped the destiny of humankind: the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the scientific revolution. Harari is the intellectual heir to T.H. Huxley. So this is 3 slides in a row. Bro, 3 books in a row that have mentioned this T.H. Huxley, Thomas Henry Huxley, right? And this was just random. I randomly had these books, but they deal with this topic. They deal with identification of peoples. So who is Thomas Henry Huxley? Next slide.
How many slides you going up to?
We about to be done. I'm doing up to 89, I think, or 88. We about to be at the end of this. So Thomas Henry Huxley, born 1825, he was an English biologist and anthropologist. He specialized in comparative anatomy. He has become known as Darwin's bulldog for his advocacy of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Next slide. Developing scientific education in Britain, he fought against the more extreme version of religious tradition. Huxley coined the term agnosticism, right? So we've heard this term so much. Huxley coined the term agnosticism in 1869 and elaborated on it in 1889 to frame the nature of claims in terms of what is knowable and what is not. Next slide. He worked on invertebrates, clarifying relationships between groups of previously little understood. Later, he worked on vertebrates, especially on relationships between apes and humans. After comparing Archaeopteryx with Compsognathus, he concluded that birds evolved from small carnivorous dinosaurs, a view held by modern biologists today. So when it comes to the comparisons of species and using the metrics of bones and measurements and comparisons of bones and morphologies, Thomas Henry Huxley was really good at this. Next slide. But given it was the 1800s, right? In October 2021, a history group reviewing colonial links to Imperial College London that because Huxley might now be called a racist, it should remove a bust of him and rename its Huxley building. The group of 21 academics had been launched in the wake of Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 to address the Imperial's link to the British Empire and to build a fully inclusive organization. It reported that Huxley's paper, Emancipation, Black and White, espouses a racial hierarchy of intelligence that helped feed ideas around eugenics. So it is the hierarchy of racial intelligence, the postulates of the hierarchy of racial intelligence that make these men faulty, not the sciences that they tried to use to prove these things, because it was the very sciences of craniometrics that disproved his postulate of racial hierarchy. That's how accurate the science is, and that's how inaccurate his biased racist postulate was. So the fact that craniometrics does not prove racial hierarchy of intelligence That is exactly what makes it accurate, because it is that science that disproved that theory, because the inner measurements of where the brain case is the same through everyone. So it was craniometrics that disproved Huxley's false postulate. And we can't use the fallacy of the postulate to throw away the entire science, because paleontology was used, archaeology was used, stratigraphy was used, the different stratas of layer of dirt that you dig in. All of these things were used to form these postulates. And when we throw out the racist postulates, we don't throw out any of the sciences that were used to make the postulates. So you're making a false equivalation when you make craniometrics synonymous with eugenics. Next slide. So no matter how racist his postulate was, the accurate measurements used to distinguish different ethnic groups held true. And the genetic evidence proved these early anthropologists 100% correct, right? Because the early Europeans are related to the Aboriginal Australian peoples. Their phenotypes, they did share. So the very peoples that were making the Venus statues in Europe, more symbols of the cognitive revolution, looked exactly like the people of Tasmania in Australia today. These Tasmanians, you can learn more about them in this work here, Tasmanians, and it talks about the individual up there on the top right-hand corner. Next slide. Individual known as King Billy or William Lene, known as the last Tasmanian, born 1834, died 1869. And here is his modern ancestor, who has traced his lineage back to King Billy. Sorry, I forgot to put the brother's name there. I forgot it. But this man is tracing his ancestry. So this is the closest that Aboriginals can get, is that this brother here traced his lineage to a Tasmanian. But Tasmanians represent the same super family that some people migrated into Aboriginal America, but they are not, he's not related to the Aboriginal Americans. He's related to the Tasmanians that stayed in Tasmania, that are cousins to these distant Aboriginal Americans. That's the closest you guys have ever got to that. Until we start pulling out more evidence like this, where you can point to Native American findings and bones and figures, and you can put a side-by-side comparison going, look at my ancient Native American ancestor, this FBA conversation is getting real shaky. Next slide. No, other way. Yep. So 93-year-old skeleton found inside of a cave in Cheddar, England. This Cheddar, known as Cheddar Man. His DNA was tested, and it was concluded that he had a living relative that was teaching history half a mile away, right? So until the FBA can start doing this, right? Because even white dudes in Europe are tracing their ancestry back to these basal C1 haplogroup melanated peoples. The FBA, you guys got to start producing results like these as well. Next slide. And closing out here, we have the DE haplogroup, use of Y chromosome in mitochondrial DNA population structure in tracing human migrations. Next slide, by Underhill and Cavisild. So it says, of descendants in Asia cannot be empirically demonstrated. Both the refutation of the option shown in Figure 8 and the apparent absence of deep-rooted haplogroups for either CF or D chromosomes in Africa bolsters the model that haplogroup CF and DE molecular ancestors first evolved inside Africa, right? So these are the haplogroups associated to the basal Eurasians, these basal out of Africa populations. So it says, inside molecular inside Africa, and subsequently contributed as Y chromosome founders to pioneering migrations that successfully colonized Asia. So while not proof, the DE and CF bifurcation is consistent with independent colonization impulses, right? Meaning when basal Eurasians left out of North Africa and moved into Asia for the first time, there was a split and there were two populations, DE and CF. And from what the evidence suggests that we'll find later, it seems like DE represents these basal Eurasians, those who actively chose to not mix with Neanderthals, while CF, these basal Eurasians, represent the peoples that did mix with Neanderthals. And the later genetic evidence is going to point this out. Well, we've already seen how the C haplogroup mixed with Neanderthals, creating basal mulattoes of the C1 and C2 haplogroup. So we have confirmation that CF represents a model that mixed with Neanderthals. So it says, although haplogroup D and E share common ancestry, a geographic gap exists between the frequent occurrences of haplogroup E in Africa and the relic distribution of D in Asia, suggestive of long-term isolations and extinctions of descendants in the geographic intermediary zone. So even though D haplogroup and E haplogroup started off the same as DE, E haplogroup is found in Africa and the D haplogroup is found hundreds of thousands of miles away in Asia. So what they're saying is that given that distance and the lack of intermediary exchange, there must have been mass extinctions and die-offs of the relatives that connect the E haplogroup and the D haplogroup in Asia. Next slide. So it says, inferred migrations and the fact that the deepest clades A and B, which we spoke about earlier, the A haplogroup and the B haplogroup, occurs solely in Africans, an African origin of haplogroup CDEF node was proposed, right? So it says, and supported in a survey of over 12,000 Asian men. So the fact that the CDEF haplogroup is African, this was proven in a survey of 12,000 Asian men. So this is how science works. You take this population of Asian men, you would think things say Asia, 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 but it points back to the scientific genetic reality of the African origin of the CDEF haplogroup. So it says, although the initial proposal of an Asian origin of haplogroup DE, because there was an argument about that, maybe DE originated in Asia, in Arabia somewhere, but this was first neutralized, meaning made null and void, meaning stopped by the recognition of the D haplogroup M174. Then it was further eroded, meaning further evidence was added to show that the detection of the DE paragroup chromosomes in Nigeria eroded this proposal that DE originated in Asia. So it did not. What is it? What did I just say? The discovery of haplogroup D, and then the discovery of the DE paragroup chromosome in Nigeria further disproved that the DE haplogroup formed in Asia. Next slide. So here is a model from that paper by Underhill and Cavisild of the DE haplogroup. And you can see the tan area represents what formed in Africa. The magenta area represents what formed outside of Africa. And you can clearly see at the bottom the haplogroups that we've gone through, A and B, they formed in Africa, which we know. But then you jump up to the top and you see where it says M168 and M294 is the CT haplogroup. And then from there you get DE, with YAP over it, and then you get E, D, and DO. So this was a graph shown from that phylogenetic study, giving you a chart of the diversification of these haplogroups in Africa, specifically DE, D, and E. Next slide. So getting close to the closeout here, right? Who is represented by haplogroup D? And this is from the work Genetics of South Asia, Admanese Peoples, Indus Valley Civilization, Peopling of India, Dravidian Languages, and the Palayan Dravidian Tribal People by Damien Marie Athope. Next slide. So it's these Admanese type peoples that represent the D haplogroup. And as we've just shown, the D haplogroup is formed in Africa. Right, so people carrying the D haplogroup whose later descendants will be tested, and it shows that they are of the D haplogroup, originated in Africa and migrate out along that southern route. So that red line right there on the map shows that southern route through southern Arabia. That's basal Eurasian territory. So right here, when we chart the haplogroup, you can see that the D haplogroup, these were the people that took this southern route into southern Arabia, avoiding the Neanderthals and Neanderthal admixture. And today, before I gave the presentation, when I was rehearsing, I was looking and I noticed the migration pattern of the D haplogroup and where it went. And then suddenly it hit me and it stuck out. And I said, yo, the migration patterns of the D haplogroup shows exactly that they are avoiding those areas where the Neanderthal admixture is. When you compare the graph of Neanderthal admixture from the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology, remember I showed the clustering of Neanderthal admixture was where? In North Arabia, the Levant Caucasus, right where that circle is. Then where was the next clustering? In the Indian subcontinent. And then the next clustering was Southeast Asia. And if you look at the migration path of the D haplogroup, these people seem to be actively avoiding the Neanderthal hotspots. But you can see, remember the M haplogroup, you see the haplogroup diversification in these hotspots. So you can see these D haplogroup Andamanese peoples were avoiding Neanderthal territories. And the text there says D1 and D2 are found primarily in East Asia and at low frequencies in Central Asia and Southeast Asia and at very low frequencies in Western Africa. Next slide. So this is why I use the Andamanese people as a proxy for basal Eurasians. When I showed basal Eurasians mixing with Neanderthals, I used the Andamanese as a proxy because their phenotypes represent avoidance of Neanderthal admixture. So it says the Andamanese people, the Great Andamanese are an indigenous people of the Great Andamanese archipelago in the Andaman Islands. Historically, the Great Andamanese lived through the archipelago and were divided into 10 major tribes. The distinct but closely related languages comprise the Great Andamanese languages, one of the two identified Andamanese language families. The Great Andamanese were clearly related to the other Andamanese peoples, but were separated from them by culture, language, and geography. So the languages of those other four were distantly related to the Great Andamanese peoples, and they are classified in a separate family as the Ongan people. Next slide. So the Ang people or the Ongan people, the population is consistently declining. Infant mortality rates is very high. Several phylogeographical parameters such as ABO, RH blood group, blood pressure, and total protein level, hepatitis B, surface antigen, VDRL, and some genetic markers have been conducted. The results of blood pressure, cholesterol level, and liver enzyme tests do not show any abnormality. However, the incidence of HBsAg is found to be very high. That might have affected their fertility rate. So these people are having a very hard time reproducing. Analysis of paternal lineage indicates that all Ongan carry the Y DNA haplogroup D, widespread in East Asia. What do we learn about haplogroup D? Haplogroup D originated and formed and came about in Africa. That's why these Andamanese people look so African. They look so black, but they're found all the way in the Eastern Asia. So haplogroup D, widespread in East Asia and less in Central Asia. Maternally, the Ongan also exclusively belong to the M clade, bearing the M2 and M4 subclade commonly found in Asia. So it says, the proposed migration routes of the East Asian paternal lineage, including haplogroup D branches and its branches, Andamanese played a high frequency or displays a high frequency of D1A2B, previously known as D1A3. This last part is important. When compared with ancient DNA samples, Andamanese peoples are closest to the pre-Neolithic Homininians, right? This is the Aboriginal population in Southeast Asia. covered by 2 samples from Malaysia and Laos, and display high genetic affinity with the Tian Yuan man in northern China, with both being basal to contemporary East Asians, forming a deep Asian ancestral lineage. So these peoples are the official Black ancestors of all Asian peoples, right? The Hobinhinians, that is the early modern human population found in Southeast Asia. Tian Yuan man is the early human population found in China. And it's saying that these D haplogroup Andamanese peoples are representative of these first early modern humans in these areas. So this right here conclusively shows that these Andamanese peoples, these D haplogroup peoples, these basal Eurasian descended peoples are the Black ancestors and basal population of Asian peoples. Next slide. So the YAP signature, right? So the YAP is an allele insertion polymorphism found on human Y chromosomes and is present in 2 lineages worldwide. They will correspond to haplogroup E and correspond to haplogroup D. So being YAP positive indicates that you are either from the E haplogroup or the D haplogroup. That's it. So the frequency of Y chromosomes carrying YAP elements is highest among sub-Saharan African populations. That's where the E haplogroup is, followed by North African populations, where the E haplogroup is, and is rare among Europeans. Most Asian populations examined so far lack this element as well. An exception to this pattern is the presence of YAP elements in Middle Eastern and Central Asian populations. YAP element is present among Japanese populations at relatively high frequencies of 27 to 85.7%. And it's brought over there to Japan because of the D haplogroup, the Andamanese type ancestors in Japan of the D haplogroup. Next slide. So this is from haplogroup D and migrations out of Africa, Andamanese, Negritos, and Angong Isli peoples. So we're going to talk more about the Negritos. Next slide. So Negritos, meaning little Black people, refers to several diverse ethnic groups who inhabit isolated parts of Southeast Asia and the Andaman Islands. Populations often described as Negritos include Andamanese peoples, including the Great Andamanese, the Ang people, the Jarawa, and the Sentinelese. The Andamanese Islands, the Semang peoples, among the Batek peoples of Peninsular Malaysia, the Manik peoples of southern Thailand, that's who's depicted right there in the picture, the Manik people of Thailand, as well as the Aeta, the Luzon, the Ati, the Tamandak, the Panay, the Mamanwa, the Mandanga, and about 30 other officially recognized ethnic groups of the Philippines are all Negritos. Next slide. So it says, as well as displaying genetic heterogeneity, the Negritos from indigenous populations of Southeast Asia, but were largely, they formed the indigenous population of Southeast Asia, but were largely absorbed by Austroasiatic and Austronesian speaking groups who migrated from the southern East Asia into mainland and insular Southeast Asia with the Neolithic expansion. The remainders form minority groups in geographically isolated regions. So these D haplogroup basal Eurasian peoples, of the D haplogroup that looked like the Andamanese peoples, that's how dark and African they look. They look like the Andamanese peoples. They avoided intermixing with the Neanderthals, but eventually, like this source just said, they were absorbed by Austroasiatic and Austronesian peoples, who would be representative of that term basal mulattoes, right? So even though the D haplogroup did not mix with Neanderthals, they did eventually mix with the basal mulatto Austroasiatic and Austronesian peoples. That's why I wanted to coin that term basal mulatto as an umbrella term for us to categorize groups for the sake of convenience. It says a Negrito-like population was most likely present in Taiwan before the Neolithic expansion. So this is bringing us back up to China, and must have persisted in historical times, as suggested by evidence from morphological features of human skeletal remains dating from around 6,000 years ago, resembling Negritos, especially Aitas in northern Luzon. And the Aita people, that's who's in that picture there. So again, they use skeletal remains to identify these people in Taiwan were most like the Negritos. So it says, and this was further corroborated by Chinese reports from the Qing period rule of Taiwan, and from tales of Taiwanese indigenous peoples about people with dark skin, short and small stature, frizzy hair, and occupation in forests, mountains, and remote caves. Next slide. So interestingly enough, right, the peoples of ancient Sumer are sometimes referred to as black-headed people, Sagiga, like we mentioned. In Sumerian texts, this term is, for example, attested in the so-called Neo-Sumerian period in one of the royal hymns of Shulgi, which is basically talking about the Akkadian period. This said ruler is described as the herdsman and shepherd of the black-headed people, right? So we have this the Shulgi hymn, right, which is the primary for that, the primary reference for that, where this ruler is talking about being the shepherd of the black-headed people, these Ubaid period Sumerians that he is subjugating. So this term black-headed people is used amongst the Basal-Eurasian descended Sumerians. Going to the next text, it says there is a state of Li mentioned at the beginning of the 10th book of the Book of Histories, which was conquered by the chief of the West. The Chinese have for 4,000 years used this word to designate themselves and still call themselves the Li Min, which generally now is translated black-haired people, which is the same thing they used to do with Sagiga, black-headed people. It's really black-headed people, right? But that doesn't ring well to the contemporary ear. So now it's generally translated as black-haired people. But the source continues. It says, all the people among whom the Chinese are now living have the same sort of hair, eyes, and complexion as themselves. Why then did they designate themselves the dark or black people, right? So the source is acknowledging that this is really referring to darkness of the people. Did they at one time have in the neighborhood of people who were fair-haired or of lighter complexion than themselves? But the problem of the Li Ren, the black or dark men, the aboriginals of Hainan, right, is a problem which must be left for missionary travelers to solve. So I think it's interesting that the Basal-Eurasian descended Sumerians called themselves black-headed people, and also the Basal-Eurasian descended peoples of China, right? Because they're Basal-Eurasian descended from the D haplogroup, Adamanese type peoples. Both groups of Basal-Eurasian descended peoples called themselves black-headed peoples, right? And these Basal-Eurasians would have been in a territory surrounded by Neanderthals. These Basal-Eurasians would have been the active group who chose to avoid Neanderthals. So taking on this ethnic identity, this endonym, this inside name of black-headed peoples seems to have followed the descendants of Basal-Eurasians to Sumeria and to China, which is why you interestingly find this term, very specific term, in Sumeria, in Iraq, and all the way in China, people calling themselves black-headed ones. It seems like a cultural memory of Basal-Eurasian identity. Next slide. So the Khmer of Angkor Wat, right? In 1923, in his Racial History of Man, a hallmark work in ethnology and anthropology, Harvard University anthropologist and librarian of the Peabody Museum, Roland Barrage Dixon, noted that the ancient Khmer, that's the people of Khmer, were physically marked by distinctly short stature, dark skin, curly, even frizzly hair, broad noses, and thick negroid lips, which he is clearly describing Negrito-type peoples, these peoples of the D haplogroup. Next slide. And this is the territory of the Khmer. This is the territory of the Khmer Empire, specifically those Negritos. But if you go northeast, right up and to the right, northeast, that area was associated to these Negritos as well. And in fact, all the lands in this map were settled by the D haplogroup Negrito peoples, who are representative of basal Eurasian groups whose haplogroup emerged in Africa. The D haplogroup emerged in Africa, migrated through South Arabia, as we've documented multiple times, avoided mixture with Neanderthals, and migrated here into the east, occupying the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, China, Taiwan. So the story here has been of basal Eurasians and their ancestry and descendants of basal mulattoes mixing and going into Europe, going into Australia, and then basal Eurasians who did not mix, represented by the D haplogroup, migrating into Asia. So that concludes part one, y'all. Thank you. You could open up the lines, or we're gonna stop here. Thank you. Thank you. Hope y'all enjoyed. I know it was very
all right. Man, you used a lot of sources, so the people can't say none of that craziness.
Source after source.
Everybody else, you use source after source, brother, and the people see it. So you can't argue with the brother. You got to argue with the brothers who came up with the sources. You got to argue with them. So we're gonna open up the lines to see if anybody would like to have any Q&A. And I ain't gonna be here long. So here's the link. The link is in the chat already. Come on, Cedric, where you at? You scientific. You deal with the history. Let's go.
And even if you learn something, even if you agree with something, even if you appreciate the fact that we documented the blackness of Asia on a genetic level, you could come up and support. You could come up and talk about and add on to what you agree with. You don't have to just wait to disagree and only jump on if you disagree. Right? We talked about a lot of good things here. We talked about a lot of things that would make melanated people proud. So you could jump up here and talk about that. You could jump up here and talk about, like, you know what I mean? Or you could come try to argue. It is what it is, you know?
All right, we got Zion in the building. Zion, what up, man?
Peace,
awesome presentation, brother.
Much appreciated.
Need that. Oh, yeah. I just only had one question because I saw that you brought out, the Neanderthal, mixture, and then the D that didn't mix, which was very interesting. I didn't hear you talk much about the Denisovan mixtures. Did you touch on that at all?
I specifically left the Denisovans out because it was very wordy. I had a lot of, you know what I mean? So for the sake of condensing it, because the conversation of admixture with other hominins was covered in the Neanderthal one. So the same thing, you know what I mean? So because I left that out, though, I would love for you to add that portion about, who mixed with the Denisovans and things like that. But I did.
That's what I was waiting.
I left them out. I left them out for the sake of, economy of space.
Right. Nah, amazing. You know what I'm saying? Great work, brother. That's all I wanted to ask because I was like, where's I wanted to hear.
Yeah. It was very Neanderthal bias. Neanderthal bias.
I appreciate you saying that. All right, that's all I wanted to say. You know what I'm saying? You can open the floodgates. I want to see what Cedric got. Cedric got some pushback.
Peace, humble.
All right, shalom, y'all. All right, y'all.
All right, peace, brother.
Peace and blessings. Hey, God Energy, I appreciate you, brother. Great work for putting on for the bomb squad, my brother. That's how you come through, kick down the doors, my guy. That's how you do it. I appreciate you. I just came up to say that was an amazing presentation, my guy. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, brother. You already know how I get down, man. And I've been talking about haplogroups and stuff on the app for a long time. So I hope this makes it back to the app as well, so that people could see, the detailed information behind the statements that I've been making and the overviews that I've been giving over the years, casually mentioning haplogroups here and there. This is a time for me to go in and really give a cohesive narrative of the haplogroups and their importance to the out of Africa thing and to, our blackness all over.
Facts. You saying Sister Issa Queen in the comments? She said you
Oh
better
yeah.
bring black back. You
Oh, that's
said
right. That's right. Because I feel like we talk about evolution and race and things like that from a position of weakness, from a position of being beat down and having ethnicity used and race used against us. That's why we shied away from evolution and Darwin and things like that, because we hear monkey and go, oh, they called us monkeys in the KKK. They called us monkeys. And so when you hear the evolutionary science and we're dealing with Darwin and you hear monkeys, it's a trigger word. You know what I mean? And that right there, but
really fast. Can you expound? Because I remember in the beginning of your presentation, you was talking about the scholars who was using race theory for their scholarship. Can you expound on why you were speaking on that?
Yeah, definitely, because there's a difference between a postulate and the actual science that takes the measurements, right? So the postulate was that there was an intellectual racial hierarchy. Then they furthered the postulate by saying we can prove there's an intellectual racial hierarchy from how people look. Right. So those postulates were actually proven incorrect by the very sciences that they were trying to use to prove the postulate. And I think that speaks to the accuracy of the science. I think that's a victory for craniometrics, that even when a racist tried to use craniometrics to prove an intellectual racial hierarchy, that very same craniometrics disproved that person's postulate. That's why there's a difference between science and the postulate. And people make a false equivalation when they equate the science of craniometrics to the racist postulates and eugenics.
I would agree. And I just wanted you to clear that up for the people in the comments who was saying he was talking about racial science. I was very clear on what he was saying, but I appreciate that, brother God Energy.
No problem. And again, like I said, those types of things were argued from a place of weakness, right? So we don't want to deal with Darwin and evolution and Australopithecus and Homo heidelbergensis because we saying we monkeys, then that's you thinking that you a monkey. No, it's actually proving that you have primacy on the planet, right? All of these things prove the primacy of the black man and woman, of the melanated individuals. So these sciences should be embraced by us because they work for us. Peace, brother.
All right. Let me get my man Dazali in the building. What up, Dazali?
What's up, big brother Saw? I want to say peace to the brother God Energy. It was a good presentation that you gave us, a lot of information. But I want to ask you a question to see exactly where you're standing on it. I've noticed you've used the term melanated individuals several times. So this is just a heat check. Would you say that, and this is a term that a lot of people use, that black people were everywhere, all over the world, that black people, first settled and inhabited everywhere first? Let me try that route first.
Yeah, the genetic evidence that I just shown displayed that. We went from Arabia to Europe to Southern Asia to East Asia. We went to Australia, the Aboriginal Europeans, the Aboriginal Australians, Aboriginal Americans, the Andamanese Islands. We mentioned the Philippines. We mentioned Thailand. We mentioned Malay. We mentioned everywhere in between. You know what I mean? So yes. And through this, and thank you for asking, because that was my point. That through this type of education is how we can intellectually and scholastically make that point. When you talk to Europeans that try to downplay you, brother, at the job, and someone try to play you like you are inferior, you could come back with this type of information and let them know, hey, listen, we come from the foundating this, that, and the third on the planet. And here's how the genetic evidence supports that. You know what I mean? So I think it's just a benefit.
Okay, let me ask this to see if I can get a little bit more clarification.
Yeah.
Would you also include that we were the first people over here in America? Would you say that black people were the first people in America?
I mentioned that the C2 haplogroup migrated over here, but when I say black people, I don't mean black Americans, right? I say black people, and the term black people does not just apply to our demographic of people here in the Americas. So if I were to say black people were first, this, that, and the third, it does not mean people related to you. I want to get that. I want to make that clear as well.
All right. So you're basically classifying the people that we know of as Native Americans as black people.
Which Native Americans, right? No, that would be generalizing too much. So the Aboriginal population, the first peoples to step foot in the Americas, yes, they were what we would call black people, not black American people like me and you, but they would be black people related more to Australian type peoples or the Aurignacian of Europe.
Okay, all right. Those were those people who came on the west coast of North and South America. What about the Native Americans who went over the Bering Strait? You would not classify them as black people, though, right?
Yes, actually, that's actually what's being referred to. Those people that crossed over the Bering Strait, those would be the black people who look like Tasmanians, who look like Australians, and who also look like the early Aurignacian people of Europe. They traveled across the Bering Strait, yes.
So, all right, there's a different theory concerning that, but I'm not going to go into that. Let's go into that second migration, the people who became the Inuit and the people that we know of as Indians now. Would you classify those as black people?
I'm glad you asked that, brother. I'm enjoying this a lot. I would classify those as basal mulattoes. I would classify those as people that have Neanderthal admixture, giving them facial features and phenotypes away from the African phenotypes like the Andamanese, right? So the fact that the Inuit and Eskimo do not look like the Andamanese people is because of Neanderthal and Denisovan, thanks to the brother Zion. Let's be more technical now. Thanks to Neanderthal and Denisovan admixture, the Inuit and Eskimo people do not look like the Andamanese. So I would call the Inuit and Eskimo a mixed group. They are a mixed group.
Okay. And my final question, because I'm really not having any problem with anything that you said. Now you've clarified something. Let's go to the first group of black people who got here. Are you aware, or are you in agreement that that wave was wiped out, and or would you say that there are black people, black Americans, who descend from those people now, currently, today?
So that's an interesting and complex question. I see where you're going with this. Thank you so much for the question and bringing out the conversation. That original black population that carried the C2 haplogroup largely got wiped out. We can still find some of their remnants, but they largely got wiped out by more basal mulattoes, Austronesian type peoples, Austroasiatic type peoples. The same type of peoples that replaced the black population of Asia followed that black population across the Bering Strait to America. So you have the D haplogroup type peoples setting up shop in Asia, doing their thing in Asia. Then the basal mulatto group, right, that represents like Eskimos and Polynesians, they mix in and they subjugate those D haplogroup peoples and C haplogroup peoples. Then they cross the Bering Strait and follow those peoples to the Americas and replace them in the Americas, becoming your Plains Indians, becoming your later Asiatic Maya, who replaced the Aztec and Olmec. So, and we have in the record a reference for the black population and then the non-black population that replaced them. Let's go through these examples in Asia. You have the black Xia and Shang dynasty in China that gets replaced by the non-black Zhou dynasty. You have the Ainu and Jomon period in Japan that get replaced by the non-black Yayoi period. In Southeast Asia, you have the Khmer that I mentioned. They get replaced by the Dai Viet, where you get Vietnam from, right? And then we could follow the same pattern in the Americas. The black Olmec get replaced by the Asiatic type giving you the Maya and the mixed race Aztec.
Okay. I've heard a couple things that I would disagree with, but I'm not going to go into all that. I want to say thank you, because you've also killed where there's some people who are going to take your information that you just gave and they're going to try and run with it. And my main enemy is the "we were always here" people. So we were always here. There were Aboriginal Black people here, and that's what Black Americans are. But you clarified that, and those people heard that first wave of people that we classify as Aboriginal, and it's still kind of questionable as far as I don't know, but you've clarified that even if they were here, they were wiped out. And so the people who are native and indigenous here now currently are what you call the basal, Indo, et cetera. But you've clarified what I wanted to hear. I just wanted to make sure that no one was going to run with your information in the wrong direction. Thank you.
I get that. Thank you for giving me some space to clear it up. Also, with all the genetic evidence and stuff that I've shown, if there's one statement or link or something that I just said that you agree with, I don't think that disproves or discounts everything that I brought to be classified as pseudo. So I actually think, and I'm highly insulted at the reception that I've gotten from people that represent science, specifically Ankh and Cedric. I do think there is some sort of jealousy thing here going on, or some sort of threat that you feel. I would fall under your scientific movement. If you guys are trying to bring back scientific literacy, then God Energy is joining your train under you. I'm not trying to supplant you and say I'm bigger than you or better than you. And I see you guys keep trying to intellectually position yourself over me or try to discount everything. And I think that's corny. And I think you guys are fragile and frail. I would be a student to you brothers, but you are trying to make me an enemy. Don't call me pseudo. My information is too on point to ever be labeled pseudo. I gave you source after source. I'm going by phylogenetic research. You call me a pseudo again, and we're going to have problems. The new reckoning is coming, and I'm too humble for this. But you insult me, bro, and I'm coming at your neck. I put in too much research for this to be called a pseudo. If I was wrong in 2 statements, if I was wrong in 10 statements, that don't make me a pseudo, because I brought hundreds of facts here. So be careful when we throwing around these insults and you older dudes getting scared of us when you can be teachers and allies to us. Don't call me pseudo Ankh. Don't call me pseudo Cedric. Come talk to me.
Fire. That's what I'm talking about. Cedric, man. Y'all better pay homage, man. And stop hating, for real.
Y'all hating.
All these science group out here, brother. You got a new young group coming up now, and it's time to pass that goddamn torch anyway. It's time to pass.
Science is what I do. This haplogroup stuff is what I bring to the table. You feel what I'm saying? I'm open for discussion. Science has to correct itself. I'm open to being shown new information. I'm not the god of this. This information ain't the end all be all. New discoveries can happen and the information can update. So if you disagree with something, come build with your brother. But if you want to fight, be prepared when people swing back. But it don't always got to be a fight.
I definitely got a question for you. I want to build with you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No, King J, you can't just, man, I say before you, brother.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I say, and then you, and I know Unc probably want to clear up some stuff first. But
okay.
I say, go ahead, bro. Unc, you want to clear up some stuff?
Peace, I say.
I say, brother.
All right, go ahead, I say.
Okay. Now, phenomenal performance once again, brother. I believe it's untouchable. Well, I know it's untouchable. I'm fact checking you. I'm reading you the whole time you going through your thing. And what really stood out to me, of course, I got to get on my personal thing. I got to utilize your information to push my narrative and what I got going on the side. I'm going to admit it. So if the Hebrews was real people, Abraham and them, you telling me that they wouldn't have been quote unquote blacks like me and you? They would have been descendants of these Levantine Neanderthals? Talk to me, God.
Well, unfortunately, we experience colonialism here. So me and you do have Neanderthal introgression because of the
Absolutely.
colonial oppression that we have. So if me and you can be called black people still, and black people are called black people who still have Neanderthal ancestry in them. So having Neanderthal introgression is not the marker for the label called black. Because like Brother Ankh had read, that term black gets slapped on people from Melanesia through Asia, all the way to Africa, right? So I actually am saying that the ancestors of the Hebrews were black like me and you. By the time the state of Israel came around, there was a lot of Anatolian and Armenian type introgression, Hurrian type introgression. So I might have represented a darker Israelite. I might have been on the darker end of the Israelite spectrum, but that's very hard to say.
When I'm saying this, I'm referring to the Mesopotamian population starting with Abraham. What would that have been comprised of?
That would have been comprised of the Armenian type peoples, the Zagros mountain type peoples, the non-black type peoples. Why? Because they place it in the Chaldean period. That dates it. That dates it to around the 600s BCE. You had a lot of admixture by that time, and the SLC mutations for light skin and light hair and light eyes was already well established in that area by the time of the Chaldees. So if Abraham was from Ur of the Chaldees, he was coming from a time period and a land ruled by non-blacks.
Thank you, brother.
No problem.
Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how you doing, God Energy?
Peace.
Shay, what's up with you, brother? And
What's up,
King J always wrong half the damn time when he come in this motherfucker. That's for sure.
Not today.
All right. So
There we
let me say this, God Energy. So you made a lot of statements, but I'm glad you provided sources. That way we can kind of somewhat like we can actually give a fair and balanced critique on it. Because all we would have to do is follow the logic of the sources. So my point being is, do you think you can actually take different scientific articles and kind of reach your own conclusions? Do you think you have the power to do that?
I didn't do that.
Well, you introduced a new term, mulatto something. That's not in the literature.
Oh, basil mulatto. Yeah, I definitely made sure I pointed that out, and I gave my reasoning for just grouping for the sake of convenience, for the sake of talking to a lay audience. So I'm not postulating that this should be added to the academic corpus or glossary or anything like that. I just used the term basil over and over again to introduce the topic to the lay people. So I said basil as many times as I could, and then I incorporated to an ambiguous group just to help the understanding and the convenience of the conversation.
So I think the audience been prepped for the last 15 years. So just go ahead and give it to them. Like you coming in where you can just give them the accurate information. So are you familiar? I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the work Gina Leblowski. Familiar with her, correct?
Assume that I'm not, and just tell me how it relates.
Okay, well, she actually came up with a comprehensive theory on why humans have varying skin colors. Her husband, Chaplin, he actually worked for NASA, and they did the radiation, meaning they use satellite technology to monitor the UVA and UV rays. And if you know anything about evolution, it's the radiation that causes damage to the DNA, the genes, which causes a mutation, because a mutation ain't nothing but a mistake, but it's based off the damage, and this is caused by radiation. And so what I'm saying is take a comprehensive study of that scientific theory on why humans have skin color and plug it into your presentation, and I think it will help correct a lot of the errors. I would like to say this last thing.
Mm-hmm. We can't hear you.
Give me the
We can't
phone.
hear. Mm-hmm.
He cutting out. So
Yeah, what I wanted to add is the information about the SLC gene mutations is going to
Yeah, I
be
got
in part 2 on Friday. That is in
I
part
got
2.
knocked
So
out.
so Ankh, you are 100% on point by talking about the necessity for that information. And it's in part 2. It's one of my favorite parts in part 2.
I got
And
cut off
then
by the phone. Can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you now.
I just want to close. I don't want to come crazy and hard, but you know, I like the fact that you're using scientific jargon. I like the fact that you're bringing sources. With the part that I don't have, it's not, you don't have a lot of coherency with it. Meaning, there's no way you can take the Venus of Willendorf statue and try to put a type of phenotype on that. Like you don't,
Okay.
everything don't gotta be, you know, African. You know what I'm saying? There's non-Africans too. Everything don't gotta be brown or dark skin. You know, like the Egyptians can be just as light as you and still be indigenous Africans. They can have
So
alkaline features. So
let me just stop you real quick.
go ahead.
At the time period, this is why temporal ranges are important. This is why you can make that statement, because at the time period that the Venus statues were made, these Eurasians or non-black peoples that you're talking about did not exist yet. They did not exist as a population group. That's why the mutation. That's why I was just thanking you about bringing up the mutations of the SLC genes,
What's the time period?
the
What's the time period?
depigmenting. The depigment, the oldest European that was found with blonde hair is 16,000 years old. That's tens of thousands of years after these Arygnasian peoples anyway. And that's just blonde hair, which we know was found in black peoples. That's why the source says that. But when you talk about the depigmenting alleles, the mutation of SLC45A2 and SLC24A5, these come about only 8,000 years ago, my brother. And I'm gonna bring this out in the second presentation. That's why I was thanking you for bringing this up, because that information is important, and I'm introducing it in part 2. I think what goes unknown by most of the public is the time period and temporal range that these things emerge. So the Arygnasian existed at a time before the depigmenting alleles even mutated from that radiation that you're talking about. You're completely correct about the model of the science. The technicalities on the time period and when they apply to human history.
I'm certain on the time. I got a great understanding of chronology. So you got to go past. You got to go past 60,000. You can't say 15,000 to have what you call Europeans. They got
That's not what I said.
Let me say this. You said blonde hair, right? Or introduced to the SL2.
No, but see, you can't, you're not following what I'm saying. Then you're trying to recreate my statement, and you're inaccurately recreating my statement from the lack of understanding.
Say it again. Get it straight.
So what I'm trying to
relax. We're not fighting.
I am. I'm fine.
What you saying about the statue of Billington? Go ahead. Wait, what you saying?
What I'm trying to let you know is the mere fact that they dated the Stato Cave monument, the lion-headed man, to 32,000 BC. It points to a fact that these people were African, because and not even African, they were melanated. They were like the Australian type peoples. They were Negroid. Those were the terms used by the anthropologists. Why can you say that? First, because the bones and the craniometrics shows that. Even if white people existed at that time, the bones show that these were related to the Black Australian Papuan type peoples. But at this time,
I don't like the term white, but go ahead.
Hold on, I get that. So whatever term you are comfortable with, when I say white in your head, imagine the word you're comfortable with, or I will use whatever word you're comfortable with. But at the time, At the time of the cognitive revolution, when the Stato-Pic man was carved, when those Venus statues were carved, it was at a temporal range where the group we know of as Eurasians or Indo-Europeans or the non-melanated people, whatever semantical term you want to use, those people that colonized us today were not around on the planet at that time. And that's what all of the genetic evidence says. And I'm not being racist or anything like that. These are white scientists and geneticists tracing back their phenotype. And the temporal range that they land on is at best 10,000 BC. But this is way after the Venuses and the Stato-Pic man. Right. So not only did the bones and the osteological and the craniofacial analysis show these were Black, Australoid, Negroid, Papuan, Melanesian type peoples, you also can infer that just from knowing when white people appeared genetically on the planet, my brother. I'm not being like Malachi Z. York. I
No.
promise
I'm just saying that's just incorrect. I
I
don't want to fight over
promise
that.
you.
I'm saying they got skulls that date past 15,000 and 30,000, and that's all I was saying, brother. Now you can think.
Skulls have
So
existed before
hold
the
on,
human
whoa. Just give
species.
me 2 seconds. Give me 2
What do
seconds.
you mean skulls
I'm
exist?
saying when humans leave out of Africa, they
Mhm.
mutate and they become part of the non-African population. So you
Yeah.
can call them what you want. They are a non-African population. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And they range in skin color, and there's some pockets where they're dark brown, but skin color does not denote them being African or non-African. That's another point that needs to be brought to the conversation. So I'm strictly saying I just want to stay right there on that point. I'm not
Mhm.
going to go back and forth. I'm saying I can bring up skulls that's older than 30,000 years ago in that area. That's all I'm saying. And they're part of the non-African population. By the way, are you
But
familiar with the work of Kiskov? She has the
yeah,
oldest
Fiskov,
alleles.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so that SL245, you can find that in Africa at
yes, but
100,000 years ago. Hold on, at 100,000.
but
So that's not even a
That's why Papuans and Melanesian peoples can produce blonde hair. That's why you can have a jet black person with blue eyes. That's why Cheddar Man had blue eyes. That's exactly what I'm talking about, brother. But what
yeah,
it
but they
is
not
just the
African though. I'm just
details.
saying they're not
Wait,
African.
could you just hold
That's
on?
my point. Yeah, go
That
ahead,
term,
bro.
when they say non-African, they're only
Yeah.
talking about a set of alleles. They're not talking about phenotypes. So there are individuals in these phylogenetic studies that are labeled non-African, but their phenotypes are 100% Africoid. And that's where your misconception is coming in, which is a common misconception. That's a very common mistake that you're making.
All right, I got to move on. There's other people in here. I say, did you speak already?
No. Well, I
I
think
say,
he did.
Yeah, I did. We talked. We
Hey,
chopped it
sorry
up.
you cut me off like that though.
yeah, I want to move on. I got
Okay,
to
but
move
you
on
don't move on in the middle of that statement though. How you gonna move on right there? Come on, bro.
because,
That's a wild move on for me.
Come on,
because
now.
I can
So
do
let
that.
me. Okay, all right, bye, man. All right. Yeah.
All right, you got to stop that, brother. I got to move on. I say that. Oh, I let you go back and forth for a minute, huh? It ain't like I just cut you off. Because if I keep going, y'all will keep going. you know,
No,
you
no, okay. No, I won't keep going.
know.
I'm just saying I'm
I'm a,
not confused
I
about
will.
anything the brother said. I'm gonna
I
say that.
will. I
I want to
will.
get that part out. I'm not confused about anything the brother said. I'm clear on what he said.
I
That's
never.
all I want to say. I'm
I
done.
never
Let
said
them
you
niggas enjoy
was
themselves.
Hey, I never said you was confused, brother.
No,
All
he
right.
said it. He said it, bro. Listen up. We having a great conversation, but listen up. He said it. I'm saying I'm not confused. I'm saying I know what I'm talking about. I'm saying I can verify what I'm talking about. On that one point, I want to stay on one point. Not today, though. One point. I don't want to run around the board. One point. Non-Africans are non-Africans for a
I'll
reason,
come right
dealing
back
in
to you.
phenotype and DNA. I'm saying that. I'm going to stand on it. I'm done.
All right. King J, what you got, man?
Peace to the panel. Peace, Unc Cedric, to the panel. I say, Bomb Squad. Uh, decent presentation. Definitely took notes. I wrote down a few things. I wrote down geographic location and environmental adaptation. I wrote down the human skull changes on external factors, including diet, climate. Put your screen back on real quick for me, if you can.
No. Just go ahead, brother.
Okay. And the Thompson's rule. I wonder if he's familiar with the Thompson's rule, where it says the human nose shape is an evolutionary adaptation to climate and environment, not race. The brother seems to do a lot of a word that I made up the other day on the panel, a lot of colorism. When we spoke about the Natufians are a West Eurasian group with brown skin. So looking at the Natufian, and so Unc was talking about it and brought it up, right? Environment, skin color in the house, skin color. So when we're talking about the Natufians, I think they're like a Mesopotamian type, 32, 34 longitude, latitude. So they're like in a perfect environment, right? So their skin tone is brown. It's neither white nor black, right? Diet, climate, environment, not so much race. What you seem to be talking about a lot is saying that if you're in a certain geographical location or longitude or latitude, you are a certain race, opposed to being your skin is adapting to the environment that it
I
actually
didn't say
is.
that.
Well, yes, you did. So when you're talking about
I did.
the skull types, you talked about craniometrics, right? And you're associated a Negroid type skull, correct?
Yes, those types of terms were used: dolichocephalic, negroid, australoid, ostrich.
So those terms right there. So when you're using those terms to describe Negroid, that's scientific racism, right? So are you familiar with things like the bell curve, where there's an overlap, right?
Mhm.
Are you okay? So so the bell curve would kill everything what you just said, right? Because the overlap would be you can't tell what. So when I asked you the question earlier about can you tell race by skeleton, you said yes.
Hold on, you said, can you look at a skeleton and tell who it is or tell what race it is? No, you cannot. You have to measure it, my brother. And all of the craniofacial analysis said that. But hold on, let me just add one thing real quick and I'm gonna let you go. I never said, depending on what latitude or longitude you live at, that's what race you are. I never said that. Never implied that.
But you did say your skin color will be a certain color if you're in a sub-Saharan regions, correct?
No, I never said anything like that. Never said anything like that.
So when you talked about the basal Eurasian, right, and them not having any Neanderthal and them staying in the Levant area, right, in that area.
No, the basal Eurasian homeland was in the Arabo-Persian Gulf, right under Sumeria. So that's on the complete opposite side. You tried to say that I said they were on the Levantine side. That's the west. I actually said they're on the east.
Levant.
They're on the east. The Arabian, no, that's on the opposite side of Arabia. The Levant is on the west side. The Arabo-Persian Gulf is on the east. Is on the east side. You might be confusing the Levant with the Fertile Crescent.
How far does the Levant stretch? Does it not stretch into Edom and Midian? Is that not?
That's not where the Arabo-Persian Gulf is. That's not the Arabo-Persian Gulf basin.
Right, but it's still considered. But let's not argue about the location of that. We're talking about Natufians. Let's talk about the Natufians, right? Right?
Sure, let's set the topic.
Because the Natufians are the exact basal Eurasian branch that we can identify. Right?
No, they're not.
I'm out. Hey, God, you know you can always go to your sources if you want. You could tell me put it back up. I could go to one of your sources if you got something.
Please do.
If they requested, sure, I'll come off the dome. But in the work that I had where it talks about the Arabian and Iranian lineage, where basal Eurasians are mentioned, it specifically said, my source specifically said Ibero-Maurutians are the best proxy for basal Eurasians. Ibero-Maurutians are a North African population. The Natufians are a Levantine population. So you were wrong about the group and you were wrong about the geographic region that the group was in. The Ibero-Maurutians were the best proxy because of that North African ancestry, because basal Eurasians are also from North Africa. This stuff is going to come out in part 2. So
let me tell you, King J, The reason why you are in error, King J, the reason why you are in error is because instead of adding on to the build, you're looking for holes in the statement. And that's what everybody is doing. Instead
Y'all don't know enough. Y'all don't know enough about this to do this. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
don't do that.
Bro,
Don't say
respect
that,
is
yo.
respect,
Nah,
but
Don't
because
say
he
that.
cut me right in the response. So let me
Yeah, now
respond.
sa.neter doing
So
that. Sa.neter
yeah,
won't let you grow, bro.
he cut
Sa.netter's
me.
not allowing you to grow,
He
bro.
cut me right in the response because,
Yeah,
brother,
sa.netter's not letting you grow.
when you talked about the Iberian Maroons, brother, they did not leave the Levant.
who didn't leave the Levant? The Ibero-Mauritians are North African. The Natufians are in the
They're the
Levant.
North African group that did not leave the Levant out of African theory. They're the ones who stayed, that didn't go to America, that didn't go to the Caucasus Mountains, and didn't go into Europe. They're the Basal Eurasian group you're talking about. The Natufians are the best representation of that group because they're 70% West Eurasian and 30% sub-Saharan, and they're the representation of that branch.
Bro, Basal
Brother,
Eurasian
let's
means
talk about
not mixed
who
with
are the Tufians,
Neanderthal.
brother. Let's
Hold
talk
on.
about brother. Let's
Hold
talk
on,
about the
hold on,
Tufian group,
hold
brother.
on. Basal Eurasian means not mixed with Neanderthal. This
Right?
population would
What did
have
I
been
say,
before any Eurasian admixture. You said the Natufians are 70% Eurasian.
brother? Brother, you're making the
That right
conversation. You're
there.
arguing. Now you're disingenuous in your conversation, brother. I said the Ibero-Mauritians are the group who did not leave the Levant and go into the Caucasus
That's
Mountains.
incorrect. The Ibero-Mauritians
How's
are
that
in
incorrect,
North Africa. Wait,
brother?
hold on,
They
brother.
migrate.
King J,
Hold on, brother. Hold on, brother. You are so incorrect. It's ridiculous. The
They migrated out of
Ibero-Mauritians are
Africa, brother.
hold on. The
They
Ibero-Mauritians are a
migrated out of
North
Africa.
African. The Ibero-Mauritians are a North African group. The oldest findings of the Ibero-Mauritians are in Tamar Het, Morocco. Then the genetic analysis done on them were from Tafarot individuals,
And
right?
yes,
The
I'm reading the
Ibero-Mauritians, hold
Tassaro
on.
result right here, brother.
The
I'm reading the Tassaro
Ibero-Mauritians,
result,
the
brother. I'm reading
Ibero-Mauritians,
the
right.
Tassaro
See, look,
result.
yeah, you
What are you
gotta
talking
pull the
about,
source up in front of you to try to correct
brother?
yourself. The
Brother,
Ibero-Mauritians
they
are not
migrated
from the
out of
Levant.
Africa.
all
Bro,
right, King J, we gotta move
you
on, brother. We
talking,
gotta
but
move
yeah,
on.
that style is too.
All right,
They got
Orlando,
wild style.
what up, man? What up?
What's good with this Gullo, yo? What's good with the Scientific Official?
All
What's
right,
good with it, bro?
what you got, man?
I was gonna say, bro, when you talking about the Ibero-Mauritians, the Tufians, you know what I'm saying? All of the groups of Basal, descend from Basal Eurasian populations. Even the Ibero-Mauritians, they back migrated from the Druzana culture back into North Africa around 30,000 years ago. And then too, yeah, it is. It's true. If you look up the genetic history of not West
I
Africa,
got you.
genetic history of Africa, you know what I'm saying, the back migrations. And I actually went to school for anthropology too. I didn't finish, but I actually have, you know what I'm saying, schooling in anthropology. And
The
also
Natufians
like
have
we
Zoozoana
use like words
integration.
like hold on, when you use words like Negroid, Africoid, you don't use those word terms. That's outdated, bro. Like we like even when you like okay, a person might have like tropical, you know what I'm saying, phenotypes, things like that. We don't use terms like racialized terms like Negroid, Australoid. That's outdated. That's obsolete now. And two, like the Natufians, the early Natufians, before they start mixing with Iranian farmers and more derived West Asian hunter gatherers, the earlier Natufians, you know what I'm saying, were branch of Basal Eurasian. It had minor Neanderthal admixture because even the earliest Natufians is a mixture of a Modic or Mota type, you know what I'm saying, which is like a proto-Cushitic type
Mushabi,
group that
the Mushabi people.
yeah, that mixed with the Cabran coach and became
Yep.
the two.
The Kabarian
You know
group.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And all them
Yeah.
and the Ibero-Mauritian group and the Tufians are actually related because they
Yeah.
both descend from branches
So
of
let me stop you there to explain the relationships between these peoples. The Ibero-Mauritians are the North African ancestors of the Natufians. It is the Ibero-Mauritians who migrated to the Levant, mixed with the Mushabian people,
Brother, you just said they
wait, hold
didn't.
on.
You just argued me down and
Wait,
said they didn't.
hold on. Ran into the Zudzuana type peoples. That's that West Eurasian Zudzuana type that brings those SLC alleles, lightning alleles down. So the Zudzuana West Asian Eurasian type does come into the Levant. The Natufians are less African than the Ibero-Maurusians, but the Ibero-Maurusians are the ancestors of the Natufians.
No, that's not true.
The Natufians use the Ibero-Maurusian toolkit. The Ibero-Maurusians are E1B1B1A, which is the ancestor haplogroup to the Z830 that you find in the Natufians. The Natufian haplogroup is a downstream haplogroup of the Ibero-Maurusian haplogroup.
No, it's
Part
not.
two on Friday. But I agree with you. The basal Eurasians, in my presentation, it said that Ibero-Maurusians are the best representation for basal Eurasians because that North African ancestry. Basal Eurasians migrated out of North Africa into Arabia, and the Ibero-Maurusians are Africans from the ancestors that stayed in Africa. And this stuff is going to come out in part two. And we can date when the West Asians come into North Africa because it correlates with the appearance of the Ibero-Maurusian culture.
It was no Ibero-Maurusians in Africa.
All right. I gotta move on, man. All right.
So sa.neter, why you got the training wheels on it, though?
He was about to agree with me and don't know it. He just wants to argue with me.
No. Hey, God, that's not true. Hey,
yo, quiet, man. Let's go. I'm moving on. Rakufu.
No, I said, why you got the training wheels on him, sa.neter? That's not, you're not letting that man grow, yo. You stunting his growth right now.
Brother,
I didn't have this kind of conversation with people. There was nobody around. So why you stunting his growth? Let him fight.
Brother, I'm not stunting his goddamn growth.
You are, bro. You stunting his growth.
You're trying to get the subject.
You said we came up here to go against him. No, we came up here to have a scientific conversation, bro.
I never said go
He
against.
don't got nobody else to talk to like this. He don't know when he wrong and when he right. He be beating up people. We don't know.
All right, but
let the man talk.
Back around. Nah, I'm not going to do all that.
No, I feel you.
I'm trying to go around so people can get the mic.
Yeah, but you cutting it right when the person.
Yeah, I'll cut you off. All right. Right.
All right. God Energy. Can you hear me?
Peace, y'all. Yeah.
Peace.
If I don't cut y'all off, y'all will be right. Y'all will be going back.
Nah, you right. Nah, you right. Good point. Keep going. You right. Go ahead. You right.
So
he's supposed to get the last word.
Yeah. Rakufu, go ahead, brother.
Yep. So God Energy, in modern scientific position, clarify there is no races with an S. That's outdated in biology. The modern genetics and anthropology reject the idea of multiple biological human races. So the plural use this race and that race and these races, that's outdated. That's not reality. There's one race, the human race, in modern science as of present, right now. One race. For one, I want to ask you, in your humble studies, have you ever found a population on Earth that can trace their roots back to a coarse hair, straight hair population that turned into a dark-skinned, coiled-haired population? We can trace like light-skinned people coming out of, coil-haired or straight-haired people coming out of coarse-haired people, but can you show on Earth the opposite, where people from light skins, alkaline nose, Aryan features, so to speak, with straight hair, producing a society that's on Earth somewhere now, animated living or non-living, that had coil hair and and dark skin and broad nose, the African feature? Has it ever reversed that way in genetics?
I never specifically looked that up. The only case of people like that being able to produce people with more, what I don't know what you would call it, right? Black features, African Negroid features, whatever can grow an Afro. Of course, yeah. But wouldn't it be nice to have a term we could use to distinguish that? Wouldn't it be nice to have a term? And multiple terms are thrown out there. We just seem to reject all. We just seem to reject all of them just to argue. So I'm gonna say black. So I'm gonna say black. I'm gonna say black, right? You're asking, have there ever been a population of white people that gave rise to a population of black people, right? okay. Look how easy that was, right? Not in any research that I've had. The only similar thing that I've seen were the Circassians, but it's because they did have some sort of African introgression. So as far as I've concerned, I've never seen, heard a whisper, a mythology of a white group turning into a black group.
They have a word for that. They have a scientific word for it. Polytopicity. I'm gonna say this again. Polytopicity.
So polytopicity. Oh, go ahead.
When skin color can change back within 50 generations.
Okay,
So no matter what phenotype, no matter what,
color.
let me make the point, brother.
That's not what he said. But go ahead.
Listen what I'm saying.
You know
I'm
what
trying to make it. Come on, yo.
Yo,
Let me just
you
say.
jumped the line though, brother. You jumped the line.
Yeah, because they messing it up.
You gotta let
All right, go ahead.
My question is, can I stand up and be like who I am in my complexion? You see me and be like 50,000 years or whatever. I come from this direct line of white Nordic people, and I can show that that's my ancestor, not the ones over here that's black, because they had left already and made it to this point, and then I left and I made it back to this point, but I can trace mine back to the white. Can we show that?
No, that's not possible. And I had a feeling you were making up a hypothetical situation with this, given what you specifically asked, which is slightly different from what Ankh is about to say. But I think Ankh should bring that because that's a good point. But no, brother, that's not possible. And if you ended up how you are, it would have to be from some black source mixing in with those white peoples. So that's how evolution works. To answer specifically what you are asking, no, that's not possible.
Okay, thank you.
All right, hey Cedric, where you at?
Can we finish the point of the polytopicity side?
Nah, you're next. You're next. Just keep write it down. You're next.
And first of all, young God, go back in the chat and look at my comments in sequence, and then you'll see at which point I came off the rails. Came off the rails at two particular points. Your opinion with regards to the Sumerians and that claim, I would suggest you go and check out our brother Chuck Morgan. He is one that studies or delves into Assyriology real deep. He's done presentations here on the claims made about the so-called blackheads. That was one point. And another point of observation is something that our ancestor, Dr. Henry Clark, said. Using terms like black is super ambiguous. It's not within the scientific realm. We talk about clades. And to Brother's Ankh's position, if you understand and overlap the radiation chart, right, which is not a modern thing. So these processes of radiation and the changing of folic acid and to varying degrees, this was happening pre-modern human. It is part of our evolutionary process. This is why within that corridor of the evolution of human beings, there was never a singular phenotype or a singular, well, when I say phenotype, that says it all. It has to do with morphology and skin tone. It is based on the environment that these things are predominant. So along with clades, you need to overlap the radiation chart, like Brother Ankh was explaining from Gina from Lebowski, and you can make synthesize your whole presentation. Again, go chronologically through the my comments, and you'll see great presentation, on point, great work. The moment the racialization came into the equation again, right, is when I came off the rails. And sa.neter knows when he pulls up what he pulls up, my brother. So no, don't take that term literally, right? I was being very specific. So it's not that I'm opposed to you, challenging or want to fight. It's not that, right? But I'll indicate, hey, here's where I'm off the rail. That, but don't agree. That's pseudo. But it's not calling you pseudo or implying anything. It's just a jargon used within these atmospheres. But those are the points.
I know, but the negative connotation to it is where it gets a little off.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you specifying that, right? But where I will agree with you is that when I said the thing about the black-headed thing, that's not something that I would stand by and say this is what I believe and things like that, because I brought up how there could be a connection between the term black-headed people and the basal Eurasians of now. The term black-headed people is being thrown around in 3000 BCE. Right, that's when the term black-headed people is being thrown around 3000 BCE and onward. I said in my presentation that maybe they were saying that because the basal Eurasians of 60,000 BCE lived around Neanderthals, and these Neanderthals had red hair and light skin, which we know sometimes they did. So that right there, if I were to put that forth as a fact, that's super pseudo, right? So I understand where you were at with that observation, because to say that and put that forth as a fact, that's super pseudo. That's why when I brought it up, I tried to bring it up as this is interesting. That's all. So I understand your reaction to that in context, right? But it's the use of that term pseudo that we throw around very, very light. You know what I mean? So that's why I responded to it. But I do want to stand by the fact that there are distinctions with phenotypes and things like that. So I understand the race categorization, how we're uncomfortable with that. But really what we're getting into is ethnology and phenotypes, because ethnic groups do exist. And I wish that term was thrown around more in this presentation, because really what we're talking about is ethnology. When you guys bring up terms like Negroid and stuff, that's super dated. If you look back, these references that are using these terms are from the 1800s, right? I even tried to nod to that when I brought up the article about Thomas H. Huxley, like, yo, he's from the 1800s and he's about to really be from the 1800s, right? So all of that I accept because my sources reflect that time era. You know, that's why I'm like, you don't got to come up and be like, oh, he's wrong and this, that, and the third. No, because these are things I acknowledge. You just had to ask me, right? So that's why it's like, don't call me pseudo, right? Talk to me first. So I think false equivalences were made there, and ethnology and the identification of ethnic groups based on the measurements of your skull. These things are true. This is science here, right? So, and we get uncomfortable with race because we usually have been beat up by that conversation. But I actually think when you embrace it, when you look into these sciences, you know, it does more good than anything else.
I agree. Again, when I'm in the chat, I'm dealing with the chat. And I was eventually going to jump up here to make those two specific points. And I agree. That's why we talk about clades, right? And the different clades and varying degrees of admixture, right? And then we take all these into account, skull morphology and these type of things. You need to then add again the point Unc was making, the radiation spectrum.
That's in part two. That's in part two of my presentation. That's why I was trying to say, like, I deal with the SLC mutations and stuff like that in part two. I just didn't do it in here. That's why it's like it wasn't missing. And part one of this isn't making a claim that like, I get why just looking at this, it looks like something, but I know what I'm about to say as well. You know what I mean? That's why when you talk about the SLC, I'm like, I'm getting to all of that. I don't like, that's why I'm like, I don't know why you're trying to talk like I didn't get that. I know about the SLC genes. That should imply that I know about.
All right, moving on. Unc, let's go.
So a God energy. Can you hear me, bro? Yeah. So you got a pseudo name and I got a pseudo name. Uncoquette. You got God energy. And yo, so we gotta go get a long way to fight that, yo. I'm telling you.
But
what I'm
why
saying is, bro.
Name though, Unc? God energy. I don't get that one. How is that a pseudo name? You breaking up, Unc? You breaking up?
I said because it's connected to a whole bunch of wild information. Same with the Egyptian names, connected to a whole bunch of wild pseudoscientific information.
That don't make it.
I'm gonna let you know. It do something. Yeah, I mean you got to be super clearer, is what it means. That's why I'm saying. You have to be even that much clearer.
Hey, do the English language got us connected to English?
No, Tahuti. No, go ahead, you having a dialogue with God Energy, brother. Tahuti do that all the time, don't he,
I know, especially do it to me on purpose. I don't even get mad no more. I don't get mad.
No, this Rakufu.
Rakufu do this all the time.
So all the time, he be loud too. So I also want to tell God Energy. I am not a scientist, nor am I an anthropologist. I'm self-studied. I learned on my own, and I have conversations with experts, and I transmit science. And I'm sure you're on the same path. So we are going to mess things up, bro. I want you to know that, and I'm including myself in that. So when I come on here, I don't come on here as if you're a little boy. I come on here as you're equally trying to transmit science to the community, and I'm coming up and I'm letting you know, and I'm identifying what you got wrong. Right, wrong, or difference. All you would have to do if somebody don't try to save you is make the correction or say, Unc, you're wrong, and we'll fight out with the sources. But I'm in no way am I trying to break your spirit or trying to little boy you or trying to think that you just don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying is just be thankful that you got people like me, Cedric, and Gullah who had to go through this without no damn help. See, you actually got somebody that can fight you. I had a bunch of pseudos fight me, bro, and that's frustrating because they don't know what the hell they talking about. So I'm never doing that. So I'm telling you, based off what I understand about evolution and skin and all that together, yo, your presentation was wild. But it's wild with a check mark, meaning we just gonna work through it. I'm gonna work through your sources and see if your sources say what they say, one item at a time. So we gonna get into the Negritos and that base population that migrated to the America. All that you talked about is easy work for me and you to go through, bro. So this might not be the right place to do it because sometimes we think we get into it. People listening, I'm saying, yo, I'm humble enough to get corrected by you and anybody, yo.
No,
I swear I am. I'm just not humble enough to get corrected by a pseudo making up pseudo claims. That I can't get corrected by because it's just not right. But if you say something is right, you say a lot of things is right, bro. I'm gonna say, yeah, brother, it's right. Pseudos ain't never saying nothing right, bro. And even when they say something right, they saying it to get you on something where they're 100% wrong at. So that makes the whole point wrong anyway. So that's my point for coming up here, yo, to give you a guide and give you a litmus test to see where am I at. To this point, I don't think y'all really had that kind of pushback. I think it's very healthy. I think it stimulates a scientifically based ideas and scientific value that we're trying to promote. And this is what scientific brains do. They do exactly what me and you do. They don't get mad. They get a little upset back and forth. But I'm saying it don't mean I'm hating on your presentation. That's all I want to say, bro. At all.
Street Soupy, can you cam up so I can see who you are?
Man, that's Ngozi, man. Come on, bro. That's Ngozi.
I don't know that, brother. That's a whole new name.
This is, he switched names because he's pseudo with that.
What I wanted to say in response real quick is my stance on skin color and everything like that has not been presented yet because that portion is in part 2 of my presentation. So that's also what I'm gathering from listening to you brothers when you're trying to add that, because you naturally as intellectual scientific brothers, you heard what was missing. Right. That's why all of you brothers jumped up here and tried to educate me on the skin color because you heard what was missing. But that's in part 2. So what I have to say about skin color and all of that will be said in part 2 on Friday. So just observing and listening helped me understand you brothers in that observation that you had. Right. And I like that. And as a representation of what Ankh said, because you guys came up to educate me. Yo, you missing the SLC stuff. Because that's in part 2. And that's a representation of the purity that Ankh was talking about. So don't think your words are lost on me, because I am able to see in actions the concept that you're talking about.
Hey, Ankh, I just wanted to ask, is your name?
Yo.
God dang, man.
You can't do that, brother. You just can't cut in. How you know I'm not getting ready to say something, brother? You keep doing that. You can't do that, brother.
You're a professional with that shit.
So let me get to Ngozi. Ngozi is in the building. What up, Ngozi?
What's up, brother? Peace and love. I just how y'all doing? And peace and love to the panel and peace and love to the brother. It was a good demonstration that he went through.
All right.
You saw it?
I didn't get a chance to look at all of it. I watched like a few of it. I've been going in and out, but a lot of
Man.
I
a lot
called
of
him and told him to look at it. So we
yeah,
all
Yo,
on the
thank
same
you.
yeah.
page.
So
Thank you.
a
Thank
lot
you.
of
I
a lot of
appreciate that.
information. I've been going through this for years. This is what the biggest thing was. I'm glad the brother did it. He showed the data. Far as the Zuzana part, Zuzana didn't have SLC 245. They didn't bring that back. They were dark. And far as the Natufians wasn't full basal Eurasian. And also the Iberomaurusians were not full, even though they used them as a proxy, they were not fully basal Eurasian because the Zuzana was only
Exactly.
35% basal Eurasian. They wasn't even full basal Eurasian, the Zuzana, who were more genetically closer. If you look at PCAs, they're more genetically closer to Anatolian hunter-gatherers, right?
That's what I was trying to tell your mans in the middle box.
No,
So
I
we
agree. I agree with that. Now, what I was
Yo,
saying was,
Let Ngozi finish.
but,
The Iberomaurusians that left out of North Africa that integrated into the Cambrians were already admixed before they became Mushabian. These were
Oh, that
not
might have been King J.
these were not they were not fully Takahori like or Moto like when they left out. When they left out, they were already admixed because they already mingled with the Zuzana, which shared deep West Eurasian lineage with populations there, primarily
Yeah, I
the
apologize.
Cambrians.
I was telling King J that. I apologize.
Oh, so I just wanted to, but the Zuzana didn't have SLC2, and they didn't have it. But and Street Sufi is not a pseudo name. I'm actually a Sufi. I practice Sufism, so there ain't no pseudo name, man. I don't know what y'all talking about.
Not the God killer. The God killer said all that.
Oh, but it was a good show overall. But I want to say there's a problem. There is a real problem going on, and to the data that's being published that's been put out there. They are trying. Now I'm not saying they, because in science no one can speak with absolutes. Nobody. Like anybody can be completely wrong next week or next year. So there is no absolutes in the field of science. Let's just get that right. But I do know there's a problem with what some scientists are trying to do, because they're trying to link Homo sapien arisen in the northwestern portion of Africa to kind of fit the old racist model of a Mediterranean origin of Homo sapiens. And this is why, even though Jebel al-Hud was found in Morocco, that doesn't mean he was from there, because you also have Ewe Elaru that needs to be recalculated on his age in Nigeria. And also for A00A, it makes more sense that marker would have rose at that base point in Central Africa more than North
From the
Africa.
with the Shumlaka, that's the importance of the Shumlaka findings, because they say it's either that Central African lineage that they inherit A00 from, or the North African. So right there is that polemic between the North African and Central African thing. That's why I like the Shumlaka findings.
Yeah, they saying
exactly. Yo,
they saying different
Ngozi,
things.
you revealing stuff that I'm saving for an FBA debate. Low key, I'm setting up for an FBA debate, and all of this is what I'm trying to use in that debate. That's why I left it out of my presentation.
Oh, for sure, brother. See, I get into it with a lot of races, period, regardless of the skin color. But it's a lot of people that push for a North African model for us a role, and I'm like, nah. Central Africa should be a base point we're really studying, because there's a lot of things that's been excavated. They don't recalculate it. They don't look at it. And even with Jebel al-Hud, him going up there, we can't disregard Flores Bear skull that was found in South Africa. We can't find what they just. We can't. So my thing is,
I mentioned that in my presentation.
North Africa is the place where we always ran and went backwards and forth to as a species. But even with the finding what they just found from 700,000 years ago, saying that the predecessor for Homo sapien, Neanderthal, and Denisovan was found in Morocco. But there's a lot of things going on in East Africa near, Omo Valley and different things.
Now look, caveat,
caveat
to that, in my presentation, the source says that it's either Homo heidelbergensis or I think Homo rhodesiensis, right? Which correlates with, you know what I mean? So that's why I was honored that you caught even a piece of my presentation, you know what I mean? Because I know you definitely have that authority with the studies here. So I do acknowledge that.
I ain't gonna lie to you.
My ego ain't making me blind. You know?
No, bro, Lahi, bro. Listen, what you did is great. It's amazing, man. You getting the people in the right direction. Again, none of us can talk with absolutes, bro. I mean, this is the thing. We all want to teach. So I think that what you did, you put it out there. You lead people in the right direction. Now it's up for the people to go research and look into this stuff to get a full understanding of what's going on. You know.
All right,
Yeah,
all right, all
yeah,
right.
much appreciated.
Yo, Rakufu, go ahead, brother. Let it out, brother.
All right, all I wanted to say to Ankh was this, brother Ankh. This is not a diss or disrespect. I'm asking because I'm reading the name on over the thing. It says God killed Ka, and I'm wondering, are you trying? Did you mess up and forget the KL right there, and make it God Killa?
Then what?
Okay, we looking at your name, and it
Unc
spells
Duh.
God
He
killed
ain't
Ka.
duh. Unc the God killer.
Okay,
Unc
'cause
the
on the
it's right
screen,
there, yo.
everybody see what I'm saying? It says God killed Ka, right?
Oh, I don't know. Shit. I don't know. You must have me saying I think
KILKA. God
Yes,
that's
you're
you
right.
want to
killed.
You're
stop
right.
me on sex for that?
That's
You're
all I
right.
was
You're
saying.
right, Rakufu.
That's all I was saying. If you need to change it, fix it where you want it to say.
Oh, all right. Well, shit. Don't
Yeah,
matter. We can
you
switch our lanes anytime.
Yo, man, y'all gotta
Anytime.
bang on me for being wrong. That's cool.
I switched it anyway. Hell with it. It's different now. Whatever it say, that's the new name made.
All right, brother. I'm out to.
I was gonna go to say it don't matter.
All right.
Shit. Hey, God, hey, God
Yeah,
Energy. You know why I mentioned the skin mat though, right?
because why?
You gave a reason why I mentioned it. Let me tell you, I mentioned it because it invalidates your whole presentation. That's why I mentioned it. You feel me? You gotta
Hey,
feel that. Just feel that. And you know
what's
that's part of the
what's
scientific mind. Hold on, you
invalid?
know that, right?
All I mentioned was haplogroups and the migration of haplogroups. I never made any claim about skin color or race or anything.
No. You
That's why
talked
I'm like,
about
what?
dark skinned people. Hold on. You talked about dark skinned people. You talked about the basal branches of Adam and Eve,
yeah,
the
but
skin melanated. You said melanated people.
hold
What
on,
does that have to do with?
hold on for 1 minute. Yo, please don't say that again, man. Talking
What?
about I'm trying to stop the young brother growth. Don't do that craziness, man.
It's the truth. What you mad?
You
So you can
talking?
get yours off. I can't get mine
No,
off.
but
I'm
I'm
just
not
playing
trying
like
to
you
stop
playing.
this brother from growing.
Yeah, you stopped
You don't do
Jabari from
that.
growing. You always save the day.
You said I stopped Jabari too.
All the time. You
Oh,
everybody know. Ask in the
man.
chat. Do sa.neter dive in when Jabari on this panel and save him? Hit the one. Hit the one.
But that's
Hey,
not
We
stopping.
staying out of that. That's between Ankh and sa.neter. We staying out of that. Mute your mic.
Oh man, you do, yo.
I said,
Hey, so
I'm
look, so
saying
look,
God energy is a God energy. You said
so you're not
melanated
gonna
and
say
all
I do
that.
you.
so
I
look,
do you like
wait, look.
You don't say it. You make
I've
no fight.
experienced this before. I made
Experience what?
no
Which experience?
claim.
Which
I've
experience?
made no claim about the origins of white skin, the
I see
origins of
that.
white people. Hold on, just wait, just listen. I made no claim about the origins of these people. I made no claims about what it means if they're aliens, if they demons. Just listen. I didn't even mention the differentiating of skin tones in my presentation yet. All I did was give descriptors of individuals that represent haplogroups. And I did that based off of the genetic articles. So all I did was show depictions of black people, and we have this squeamish thing about feeling racist. In your response, your larger message to me is God energy, don't be racist. But I'm not being racist. All I did was show images of black people, and that's where insecurity came. I never made an unscientific claim about skin color or anything, but dealing with this topic, we feel like we have to shy away from the topic of race, the topic of phenotypes, the topic of ethnicities, because we've been beat up by this. And that's why people stayed away from Darwin and evolution, Unc. And you are trying to break down that barrier. I am stepping to the next forefront because I'm comfortable with Darwin. So I'm standing on the platform you built for me by being comfortable with Darwin. Now that I've got over the hump of being comfortable with Darwin, I can now explore these other sciences that our people have been blocked from and shy away from as well. So I'm not being racist by just talking about the Andamanese and showing them, because that's what they look like. I didn't make any claim about race, any claim about skin color. I didn't even talk about that topic yet. But we have this defensive thing because we're trying so hard to not look racist.
Do me a
But
favor,
we don't
yo.
got to do that.
Do me a favor. When you vibing with me and building, yo, whenever somebody else say something, don't include me. At no point was I uncomfortable with you using the word black or whatever the hell you used. That wasn't me that said that. That was everybody else. I knew the hell you was talking about. So get that straight. Always separate me. Talk about Egypt, anything that I'm saying, put it on me, bro. Do not include with nobody. No, Nobody. Let me I'm gonna die by myself with the sword in my damn hand. You gonna kill me, not because I was trying to transmit an I did it in Gozi or Gullah said, because I'm trying to transmit it. So no, I was not uncomfortable with that. I didn't think he was being racist. I simply made the point that understanding the evolution of skin and that skin map and that radiation debunks your presentation. But watch this. Yo, that's damn near the
You didn't
greatest
say
thing
how.
let me say that. Let me say I did. You thought I said the skin map for some other reason. I said my reason because it debunks you. Now watch this. That's like one of the greatest comments that anybody gave you when I said that, bro. Because that's what true science is about. Having their ideas, quote unquote, falsified, bro. And that's when you learn something.
So
So
can I
don't be
ask?
dismayed and don't get mad. That's
No,
all,
I'm
bro.
not. I'm trying to find out the relevancy. Does
Mm-hmm.
the radiation skin tone map debunk out of Africa? Because that's all I was talking about was out of Africa. So if you're saying the skin tone radiation map debunks out of Africa and the phylogenetic haplogroup tree, I'm happy to hear you explain that.
I'm saying that when you start making statements about people in the Adamese Island being melanated and all that, and having some kind of relationship with Africa, that's just not true.
All right.
Although all humans come from Africa, just because you look.
I want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you, brother. You hear me?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, bro.
All
Appreciate
right.
God energy. Good work, though, God energy. Good work.
Appreciate you.
King
Thank
J,
you.
King
Thank
J,
you, Elder.
I'm still waiting on you to let me know you got a presentation ready for me, brother.
I got one ready for you. So how should I get in touch with you?
Damn, you ain't got my number?
I hit an email. No, just back chat to me real quick, and I'm gonna text you.
Okay.
Good job, God Killer. You fixed your name.
I didn't fix it. Somebody else did.
Oh,
I did it.
all right, sir.
He making me look bad, man.
No, I'm not, sir. Come on, bro.
Nah, I'm only joking, man. I noticed something, man. You and Yara, man, y'all dudes are weak and soft, man. Y'all dudes are soft as hell.
All right, so you don't.
Kill me, my mama,
You don't.
my grandma.
I ain't did that in a year.
Yo, I'm gonna tell you, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's back there, King J.
What's up?
I'm gonna tell you, Unc, man. You were supposed to let Chief X in and beat him up. You just let people get away because you be caught up in your little emotional feelings, man.
Okay.
You gotta stop that stuff, brother.
Did you go back and listen to it though?
It don't matter, man. You should have had.
I think it do matter, yo.
No, you should have had him up in here and beat him up. You just let people get away.
You don't think I tried though, yo?
You get caught up in your emotions, man.
You sure?
Yes, I see you all the time.
Did he answer the question when everything was calm?
It don't matter.
No, I'm asking you a question. Did he answer? Did he came back up there? Did he answer the question?
Here's the question. Let me tell you this. What you should have did was tell Reggie and everybody to back up. Everybody stay out of it. This is between me and Chief X because it was you and Chief X.
We did that, sir.
Oh, so you put Reggie and everybody in the back?
No, everybody shut up. As a matter of fact, Suntan was like, I'm gonna give you my turn.
Thanks, brother. I think you're scared, though.
No, okay, Brett. I stay scared of niggas. I'm an emotional scared guy. That's why everybody get the brakes beat off of him. But my point is this. The brother didn't answer the question. Even when you had the best environment for him, when you had the training